Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to 2026. This is FFPC Insider Access live on the Better Sports Network this evening. My name is Eric Balkman. You know me from the Fantasy Football Players Championship, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, and the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. Connect with me on X at Eric Balkman. Connect with this dude on X at JB Fantasy Sports, one of the scribes and voices over at RotoWire. He is one Joe Bartel. Joe, thanks so much for carving out some time for the show tonight, man. Really appreciate it. Excited to chop it up with you, man.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I mean, what better time to talk NFL than what could be the most tumultuous postseason that I can recall in recent memory? Like, I don't think there's a prohibitive favorite 1 through 14, which makes this first week really difficult to have the playoff conversation. But at the same time, I'm really excited for it because there is no Mahomes. There is no guaranteed Eagles walk to the championship necessarily. We'll talk about the Eagles throughout the 2 hours here, but I think it's going to be a very interesting postseason. I would almost be willing to guarantee that whoever ends up winning the Super Bowl, it will be much like my Milwaukee Bucks in 2021, where there'll be a lot of people poo-pooing it or putting an asterisk in X, Y, and Z reason, because it doesn't necessarily mean whoever wins the Super Bowl will be the best team of this year. It will be matchup based, and why it's gonna be a lot of fun talking about football the next couple of weeks.
I think that's true of the NBA more often than we think. It's definitely true in college basketball, where like depending upon who you match up with in the tournament, I think you can make the case for it in Major League Baseball as well. Football, I just think like this year, as far as the postseason goes, we're so accustomed to seeing these great Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen battles, or these Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, or Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. And two of that three is not in it this year. And we've seen the Chiefs and the Ravens in it a ton. What we haven't seen is the Jaguars. We haven't seen the Bears. The Lions aren't in it this year either, and they had become staples over the last couple of years as well. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think this is going to be very exciting, very fun postseason as well. Now, Bucks, Packers, Brewers too, right?
That's right. All Wisconsin sports. I'm not some of this fake Wisconsin guy. Like, if we live in Wisconsin, we're going to be rooting for those fans. I judge anybody who's any different. We had to grow up through this. It's blood, sweat, and tears now for all these teams.
So what part of Wisconsin are you in, Joe?
I'm closest to Green Bay, about 30 minutes to 45 minutes from Appleton, Green Bay, right? Our RotoWire headquarters are based in Madison, Wisconsin.
Right, yeah.
So I like that. I've been here now. It's 10 years, actually. It's been 10 years this past season. But I grew up very, very close to Appleton and Green Bay. We've had season tickets for as long as I've been alive. I have been only able to attend like 2 Packer games now the past couple of years, but I was going with my dad probably 7 or 8 times a season when I was in high school and college. To this day, it is probably one of my favorite places to be in the entire world. I find myself the most calm and relaxed, ironically, at Lambeau. And I think my sports just overall, like my appreciation for sports has been, I think, because of Wisconsin overall.
All right. So we gotta hash this out here. What direction from Appleton, Green Bay are you a half hour, 45 minutes?
This is not a fair question. I'm so bad with this, and you should know because, like, I feel like nobody.
Tell me what city you're in or thereabouts.
New Holsting, Chilton, Fond du Lac.
Okay,
like I grew up in
perfect.
Fond du Lac. Yes.
Got it. Now, I don't know if Sean told you this. I am doing the show in my lovely home in Appleton, Wisconsin.
I did not. No, I did not know that. That is awesome. Anytime that I would go party in high school, it would be Appleton, which I think says a lot about how small of a school I came from, and also the kind of hub that you're in right now in Appleton, and that's the party place. Yes.
Yeah, it is. I think there's been like plenty of people cite these things that come out this every year or every few years.
Are we doing a drunk state thing or a drunk city thing? Yeah.
Drunk city in America, and Appleton's usually top 2. It's usually Appleton followed by Oshkosh, Madison, Peppers into the top 5. You'll see Fargo in there for whatever.
There's like 8 of the top 10 are all Wisconsin based.
It's not something to brag about, but to your point with the partying aspect, such is life. Here we go. Okay, this is going to be a fun show. Scott Colby chiming in on YouTube right now. How did you not run into Joe? We may have run into each other.
We probably did, yes.
Never even realized it. So that's awesome. So Shadow's Bar, do you ever go to Shadow's Bar?
Not anymore, but I have definitely went there a time or two. Absolutely.
Yeah. As Kramer would say, I spent a weekend there one night. So there you go. Okay, enough of the Northeast Wisconsin inside baseball stuff. Let's get into fantasy football. Now, in this, by the way, tonight on the show, Joe and I are going to go around the NFL in the first segment. In the second segment, we're going to preview the FFPC Playoff Challenge, and then Joe and I will each build an FFPC Playoff Challenge lineup in the final segment. What am I talking about? The world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge. It's live right now at myffpc.com. There is no draft. There is no salary cap. There's no convoluted rules. You just pick 12 players. They're locked in by the start of the wild card, the first wild card game this Saturday with Los Angeles and Carolina. And that's your lineup for the duration of the postseason. You can enter for $200 and win $500,000. You can also enter for $35 and win a $100,000 grand prize. The slant on this is one player per team. So if you want Stafford, you can't have Nakua. If you want Aaron Rodgers, you can't have DK Metcalf, that kind of thing. And it's so much fun. It's easy to put together. Check it out at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Joe King giving a ringing endorsement of the FFPC playoff format. He says it's, quote, literally perfect, and he has no affiliation with the FFPC other than playing in the FFPC. Yes, you have no affiliation with it. But Joe, sincerely, we appreciate that. Thank you so much. So in this first segment tonight, since we're spending so much time talking about the playoffs, I did want to touch on some other stuff that's going on around the NFL for some of the non-playoff teams because the offseason has started now. And Joe, I don't know about you, sometimes I feel like the offseason can be more exciting than the regular season, especially in dynasty fantasy football. But just seeing what these teams do in the offseason, I'm very excited to see the paths that some of these teams carve out. You think about where Chicago was last year, Jacksonville, some of these other teams that didn't even make the playoffs, and look at what they did in the offseason. And now, you know, you got New England as the 2 seed, Denver is the 1 seed, right? Chicago, I mentioned 2 seed. It's crazy. Other than the Packers, who seem to be living in the 7th seed the last 3 years. Let's start off in Dallas. And will this guy end up in Dallas next year? It remains to be seen. But I wanted to bring this up because we'll have best ball drafts coming up at the FFPC probably in the next week or two. And we have to figure out how we're handling Javonte Williams. Todd Archer posted this on X that Stephen Jones, who is the co-owner of the Dallas Cowboys, said that resigning Javonte Williams to a multi-year extension is, quote, at the top of the list this offseason. Javonte Williams is 25 years old. He went over 1,000 yards rushing for the first time in his career. And obviously they don't have a guy ready to step in if they let Williams go to free agency.
Yes.
And we have seen this before where Dallas, lets these guys go and then they don't have an answer behind them. Now they have the answer. I feel like they've learned from that. Should we be drafting Javonte Williams right now, Joe, as if he is going to be the lead back in Dallas, or do we have to pepper in some uncertainty in there? Maybe we let him fall a little bit further than he probably should.
I think this is a 3-part answer. And I agree with you. I'm very excited to do more best ball conversation. We have the RotoWire podcast that basically starts up directly after the Super Bowl. My co-host and I, Nick Whalen. I don't even know what, probably like Tuesday, but that's normally the site later.
By the way, not to interrupt you, is Nick from Wisconsin too?
Nick is also, yes. And actually, I played against Nick in high school in some of our high school sports. Did not know it at all until I started working. So like, that's how close in proximity he was to me and therefore to you as well too. So yes, a bunch of the RotoWire guys are from the Wisconsin area. I think it's one of the many reasons why this company is awesome because I think the state has got a really quality sports conversation and we do a good job identifying the talents. But Nick and I will probably be talking about best ball, I would imagine like mid-February, if not early March. And this might be one of the more preeminent conversations. Like we do it like a little bit before free agency starts, so we'll have a better understanding. I think it's very notable that it was Stephen Jones, not Jerry Jones, that mentioned this. I don't know about you, Eric, but I feel like the one I would trust of the two Joneses at this point is Stephen Jones, as opposed to like who is going to actually be telling us the quality information on the extensions. The 3-part answer to this is you're right. There is no quality backup. They had drafted Phil Mafta, I think is like a round 7 guy. He was on IR for almost the entire year. To me, he's a bludgeoner bruiser guy at his best. I don't think he's anything more than a rotational back. A lot of people mentioned Jaden Blue. That was a popular sleeper candidate as like a round 10 and later guy this summer. I never really bought into Jaden Blue as that guy. And obviously, neither did the Cowboys because he was never really involved in that. He got passed over time again. They had Miles Sanders. He's in a 1-year deal. Obviously, gets injured. I don't think he's a factor, too. And then Javonte on a 1-year deal. So there is no option in Dallas that immediately qualifies to be the starter next year outside of Javonte Williams. So advantage Javonte with an extension that would be lucrative for the running back position. Then there's the draft itself, where outside of like Love from Notre Dame, I don't know if there's many running backs that we're talking about in the same way that we were last year, where I went on record multiple places, and I feel like I was kind of wrong about this, but I'm not ready to give up quite yet my hot take. This will be one of the best running back classes of all time. That didn't end up transpiring last year per se, but compared to upcoming this year, there's not nearly the same amount of names, dynasty or best ball-wise, that we could project to be an obvious fill. Now, whoever gets the starting workload, as my guy Jim Coventry said, volume is king. Like, okay, great. Like, if he ends up being the starter for the Cowboys, if we think he's good or not, he'll end up being fine. That offense just kind of, I think, shoots out running backs in that same way. So that's an advantage, Javonte, too. Here's my one disagreement, or one I want to have a conversation with you about. I think the free agent running back class is actually really interesting. You have Kenneth Walker, I would imagine, as the headliner for it. I don't know if the Seahawks bring him back, given they have Zach Charbonnet as a high draft pick there. They could easily draft somebody, let's just say round 4, to be the Kenneth Walker replacement. Isaiah Pacheco, probably entering free agency as well, too. Chiefs looking to do something else, too. Javonte Williams in that same mix. And then there's a whole bunch of other, let's call them ancillary pieces, like Rachaad White, for example, where if Rachaad White just 1-for-1 replaced Javonte Williams in Dallas next year, I mean, Rachaad White's probably a round 4, round 5 guy, right? He could do the same stuff that Javonte Williams can. So there's enough of those names, coupled with how the NFL always seems to have now 2 running backs if you don't have a dominant one, that I don't know if Javonte Williams is a guarantee sign at a price tag his camp would want. And I'll go back to you on that. Like, if Javonte Williams is not this, let's just call 3 for 30, right? He gets $10 million per year. That'll probably make him around like running back 10 or 12 range. Certainly great money for what Javonte Williams has been the past 2 seasons. I don't know if the Cowboys need to commit to that when there's a bunch of other guys that they could probably bring in for slightly less on a shorter deal until they draft a guy they feel good about.
I think that given where they're at, I think that, well, how do I want to put this here? So given where the Cowboys are at, given how close they were, and I use close as a relative term, to making the playoffs, I think that it's going to be difficult to pay Javonte Williams and George Pickens. Now, assuming if you put Pickens on the franchise tag, I guess that solves a few things here.
Right.
But you're soaking so much into your offense here. And I just go back to, Joe, like the whole learning their lesson of paying Ezekiel Elliott, all that money, and then just basically treating running back as an afterthought, right? I feel like they've learned their lesson both ways now. And I feel like it would make sense that Javonte Williams would come back to Dallas. I think that, like, for me, I think he's at a much higher level than Pacheco. I think he is a significantly more diversely talented running back than Kenneth Walker. Okay.
All right.
So I think he is the class of the class. But you make a good point, because Dallas could just look at it from the standpoint of like, look, we want to pay Pickens sooner rather than later.
Right.
We'll pay less for Pacheco, even though he's a lesser talent. We'll pay less for Walker, even though, again, I believe is a lesser talent. There's probably some people that would disagree with me on that. So I don't know. And I think the fact that this rookie running back class, and I don't know, like, it seems like at this point every year people are always saying, oh, this is a really weak class. It's not that
you're
great.
Right. Yep.
And then we get to March and April. It's like, oh my God, look at how good you know what I mean? And so we could be thinking about it a different way then. But I do think as it stands right now, because of the rookies coming in, this is more of a Javonte Williams market rather than a Dallas Cowboys market. So I think they're going to find a way to get it done. The fact that Stephen Jones said this, I will be drafting him. If I'm drafting running backs high, and I'm not going with a 0 RB build because I don't think he'll last long enough for 0 RB. But if I'm looking at a second running back in the 3rd or 4th round, I'm going to take a long look at Javonte Williams based on what he did this year. I don't think it was a fluke. It's not like he's 30 or 31. He's 25. Yep. So there's a lot to like about Javonte Williams. And the last thing I'll say on this is we always talk about the torn ACL aspect where the first year back is always rough. Like, not rough, but it's not as good as it could be. Right. It's that second year you really feel comfortable, full range of motion. There's no stiffness anymore. Well, it took an extra year for Javonte Williams, and he was a highly regarded guy in the draft. And I think that this injury really set him back. Maybe he is a special talent, and maybe we're going to see big things from him again next year, and he could be a guy that, will be he'll be a wish I had.
And because of that, he might take a pay cut too. I mean, that's the other part of that as well. And I didn't mean to interject because I agree with what you're saying. He might take less money than the 3 for $30 that I just referenced before. And by the way, it's okay if the Cowboys want to commit to a guy that there's all the devil you know, you devil you don't. I think especially in the running back market this year where they draft or otherwise, it might be okay to be like, yeah, we're going to pay a little bit more for Javonte Williams, but look what he did for our offense and stabilized in a way that we had major questions about that entering the year. And that's the last thing you're going to talk about the Cowboys if you're saying what needs to be fixed for 2026.
We'll see what kind of focus they put on the defense too. They just fired Matt Eberflus, so they're going to bring in a new defensive coordinator. I always think the best coaches in the NFL are the coaches that don't bring their scheme with them. They cater their scheme to the talent there. And if they get a smart guy that can really utilize the pieces that they have in Dallas, then maybe they don't have to focus as much on the defense. A lot to go on yet in the offseason in Dallas. Right. And Big D, always the center of conversation. Jerry Jones keeps it that way every single year. The big story out of Baltimore this week, somewhat shocking, definitely surprising. John Harbaugh is out after 18 years as head coach of the Ravens. Ian Rapoport had posted on X that the Ravens are looking for a head coach to, quote, invigorate Lamar Jackson. Now, Rapoport said that the next head coach for the Ravens ideally would be able to get the most out of the two-time NFL MVP. There were some questions. I don't know about the locker room because I'm not there, but I know people in the media who are questioning his effort, questioning his toughness towards the end of the season. And there are at times, like, I'm not a body language policeman, but there were times where what I saw from Lamar Jackson didn't necessarily match up what I'd seen from him before. It was a bad year in 2025 for Jackson. He was awesome in 2024, kind of like the co-MVP with Josh Allen, essentially, last season. His passing success rate, third lowest of his entire NFL career, and he had the highest sack rate of his career on dropbacks, 10.3%. And I know the ankle, or that was what he was dealing with. Wasn't it an ankle or something?
There was 8 different injuries back at the end, but the hamstring injury was initially the part that kept him out until Thanksgiving. Then there was an ankle one, and then it became a leg. I mean, at one point, it was, because I always do the injury report stuff for RotoWire, there was multiple slashes, and then here's another injury, It's like, I can't keep reporting on this. This is ridiculous that we've had a 5th or 6th different injury added on a different practice report. It was insane, the level of injury stuff that Lamar Jackson dealt with this year. And I think that kind of is the answer to this. Now, I think that the wording of reinvigorating is very interesting because it's not how do we make Lamar Jackson get back to that level. It wasn't about what the Baltimore Ravens have to do to get that. It's how do we get Lamar Jackson to try to get back to that level. And it's to your point, Eric, where I've been a Lamar Jackson guy for basically his entire career. I've had a couple of claim to fames, like things I've gotten correct fantasy-wise, and was like ahead of the curve. But Lamar Jackson, that first year, I think his first year, won MVP. That was one of my guys that I was drafting everywhere. Of course, everyone won a lot of championships when that happened. But I think singularly Lamar Jackson, the talent, is one of the best and unique in the NFL. And I have never been, and I don't think I ever will be, of the opinion that his play style will age out. The way that he runs around, I understand that maybe it puts him at more risk, but for a number of years, he just didn't take hits at the same level as a mobile quarterback, because either slide down or worm around or wriggle around a tackle in a way that you're not getting schmucked too much. I don't think that was an accumulation this year. I don't necessarily think that Lamar Jackson just can't be that guy anymore. And I know that's a popular narrative right now. It's why I think the wording of reinvigorating is interesting, because if it is a matter of we want Lamar Jackson to be more invested in the Baltimore Ravens, that would explain a lot more to me about the downfalls even prior to the injury, right? I mean, like I can very easily hand wave away what happened with Lamar Jackson post-Thanksgiving. He clearly didn't look like the same level of athlete. He couldn't move around in the same sort of way. I thought Todd Monken, our Packers got annihilated by a Lamar Jackson-less Ravens offense. What Todd Monken was calling plays for Lamar Jackson was as if he was completely healthy, and that just never happened. I think back to that Bengals game on Thanksgiving specifically. There were plays that he should have ran away that he just didn't. But even before the injury happened, Lamar Jackson was not a guy you were happy if you drafted in the 3rd round. You were not happy if you had Lamar Jackson as the 2nd or 3rd quarterback after Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, or Jaden Daniels. I guess maybe Jaden Daniels because he was injured for most of the year. But I mean, that wasn't the guy. And you can blame offensive line injuries and also ineffectiveness. You talked about the career-high sack rate from Lamar Jackson. You can blame, again, the lack of skill guys as well, too. Inexplicably not using Derrick Henry a little bit more in the way that they had last year is frustrating to me as a guy, again, a supporter of Lamar Jackson. But I can buy this idea that maybe he just wasn't as invested or interested in the John Harbaugh spiel. And you and I are intimately familiar with that because it's a Mike McCarthy thing. I mean, that was the exact reason that Mike McCarthy was fired. I still remember that Cardinals game. I was in the grocery store. They announced it over the grocery store. That's how impactful Mike McCarthy was to the Green Bay Packers and what he had meant. John Harbaugh could be the same way. I think there's a stat I saw going around social media the other day that Mike McCarthy and John Harbaugh almost the same win-loss record. Obviously, they won Super Bowl each. The playoff record's pretty similar as well, too. And despite Mike McCarthy being in the news about getting head coach interviews, nobody thinks about Mike McCarthy, I think, the same way as they do John Harbaugh. So I'm okay if it is I'm not okay. I can understand if that's what the Ravens will choose to do. My whole concern, and I think this is a very big deal for best ball things this upcoming year, what coach in the cycle that we currently know of is supposed to do that? The Ravens will eventually have a head coach. That is by default what will have to happen. And they will tell us that this is going to reinvigorate Lamar Jackson. I do not believe them. There's not a guy in this group that I feel like fits what Lamar Jackson do. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if what ends up being the decision is a head coach from college would be the reinvigoration. I don't know who that name is, but that makes more sense to me than the names that we've heard of this current coaching cycle. And it's why I think the reinvigorating part is really interesting because it's the Ravens organization putting pressure on Lamar Jackson to make this next thing work.
I think the other thing, too, that I read that Harbaugh, I can't remember who reported this, but that he was asked to move on from Todd Monken.
Yep, you're right. Yep.
And he didn't want to do that, right? And I think it's funny because Monken interviewed for the Michigan job before they hired the dude from Utah. And I was like, God, Monken might just leave of his own volition, and Harbaugh could have saved it. I mean, you just don't know. And the other thing too, like sometimes I think like the thing that I remember when Holmgren left the Packers, a lot of people said, you know, at a certain point, the same voice becomes stale, which I used to believe. But now with the changeover in the NFL, with free agency and you know, basically guys getting the most guys just getting one contract, the locker room changes over so much that I don't think that a voice ever gets stale. I mean, if you're good at motivating and coaching, you can be there as long as you want. It's right. Why college coaches are there for forever, because every 4 years they're getting brand new crops of players in. The difference here is Lamar Jackson's a long-term guy in Baltimore, and Harbaugh was a long-term guy. And I just wonder if this was just a situation where they realized that this was not going to get them back to the Super Bowl. This pairing was not going to get them back to the Super Bowl. Now, the other thing, and I always say this about firing coaches, there is no guarantee that the next guy you get is going to be any better. Mm-hmm. Like Harbaugh might be a better coach than the next guy you hire. But what I come back to is when you have made up your mind that this is not going to go as far as a Super Bowl championship, then you have to cut bait. Yeah, you have to move on. You have to find somebody else. Even if you stumble and you take a step back coaching wise, and the next guy isn't the right guy. Once you know that this guy isn't the right guy, then yeah, I mean it sucks, but you got to move on. I'm just very interested to see, and I'll tell you this, just to wrap up the Lamar Jackson thing. I think he's going to be a nice bounce back guy next year. I think that he is far from being washed. I think that he is a better passer than people give him credit for.
I agree.
And I feel like he is going to be a player that drops out of maybe even the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks in drafts. And at that point, I'll plunge and I'll draft him. Maybe he doesn't, but I feel like Allen's going to be drafted ahead of him. Drake May, Jaden Daniels probably. I don't know about Mahomes. Mahomes will probably go behind him because of the injury. And who else?
I would imagine Hurts, right? Same thing.
Oh, Hurts, yeah. That's
with Joe Burrow as well too. I mean,
100%.
Yeah. So I was surprised when he initially said that because singularly Lamar Jackson could be what Christian McCaffrey was this year, at least from quarterbacks. Like
But people stayed away from him too.
Well, that's right. No, it reaffirms your point. That's like, if things work out in the best case scenario, Lamar Jackson will win you leagues in the exact same way that Christian McCaffrey won people leagues this year. It would be the same exact thing at the quarterback position.
I have not delved deep into rookies yet. But I do know a few things. If this was a pop quiz, I could fake my way through it. We're going to fake our way through the one rookie we'll talk about tonight, and that's Carnell Tate, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. Pete Thamel from ESPN posting on X a couple of days ago that Tate has officially declared for the NFL draft, projected to be one of the top wide receivers drafted. He had a sophomore season of 52 catches, 733 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Then this past year, 51 catches, 875 yards, and 9 touchdowns. 400-yard games this past year. He was the number 2 receiver on this offense, too. Bear that in mind as well, behind Jeremiah Smith. And it sounds like he's going to be a first-round pick. Joe, the way I've heard this from many pundits out there is that it is a triumvirate of receivers up there with Tate, with Tyson out of Arizona State, and then Lemon from – is it USC. Mackay?
Yep, Mackay Lemon. Yep.
Lemon, out of USC. Thank you. Where does Tate rank among those top 3 for you, or are they all sort of on the same tier and you haven't made up your mind yet?
Yeah. So I do the SiriusXM show, Channel 87, every Friday. I guess for us in Central Time Zone, 11 to 1, but noon to 2 p.m. Eastern, with my co-host Mario Puig, who is, I think, still one of the best people in the NFL. I'm sorry, one of the best people in fantasy from a prospect level perspective. So I would default to Mario's thoughts on this, and we'll have a lot more conversation when we do the SiriusXM show, really throughout the postseason and especially the Super Bowl. It's going to be like our time. We get the Underwear Olympics, get to talk about the NFL Combine. We get into a lot more depth on that on Channel 87, again, on the RotoWire Fantasy Sports Show every Friday. So I actually play in a handful of Devy leagues, I guess, for those unfamiliar leagues that you actually can have and roster college players. There's a format called Ottoneu, Ottoneu. It is my favorite fantasy platform out there. Like, if I'm not sponsored with them in any way, but if I was to wear some branding around, I'd be like, I actually really like Ottoneu because it's an auction format. I love auction leagues, but you also have college guys in there too. And the frenzy that my league mates, who are far more intelligent about college football than I am, I'm technically a Badger fan. There was no reason to watch college football this year. There was no point at all in early August too. We knew exactly what this was going to be this year. We definitely need to be firing our head coach as well too. That's a different conversation for a different day. I have never really followed college football in that same way. But the level that my friends were going after Lemon and Tyson and Tate, even before the year began, was effectively putting them in the range, at least in that format, like they were guaranteed to be what Tate McMillan became this year for the Panthers. And it's great that Tate McMillan became that, but there was no guarantee. I mean, I went and covered at the NFL draft. I'm sure you did as well too, given it was our stomping grounds. I did that for RotoWire. We got like front row passes to be able to do like live announcements and stuff. It was one of the best moments of my life and probably will always be. I was more on top of the NFL prospects then than I've ever been in my life. I would say each one of these 3 receivers is probably at the level that Tate McMillan, from a prospect perspective, was entering this year. But when you look at the top 10 teams out there, there's a lot of landing spots. Like if he ends up being a Raider, like Tate, for example, or any one of these 3, I think it's fine to expand onto Tyson and Tate and Lemon in the same sort of way. There's a number of the roadblock level teams that I get concerned with. And this is really different than like Malik Nabers, for example, because that's a much better receiver class than what I think will be this year, where Brian Thomas Jr. obviously came out at the end, but Marvin Harrison was the cream of the crop, and you had Roma Dunze that I loved a whole lot, and Malik Nabers. All 3 of those guys will be higher projected prospects than what I think we'll see this year. Malik Nabers could go into a bad situation and be that alpha guy. I think people will project Tyson in particular to be that. I think people can assume Carnell Tate will be that as well. The Brian Hartline connection, Ohio State, whatever they do with receivers. I would just be careful, because I thought the Giants' offense a couple of years ago was really bad, but Brian Dable can scheme things, and a really, really good talented receiver can still benefit in adverse scenarios. I don't know if I'd quite qualify these 3 rookie receivers in the tier that you're mentioning to be that same spot. And again, best case scenario is Tate McMillan. I don't know about you. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Eric, but I think Bryce Young is like quarterback 27. I think he's one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the league, and Tate McMillan still thrived. Now, thrived was just over 1,000 receiving yards and an offense that, at least for the first 2 months, didn't do anything outside of running the football. But that's the best case scenario that I'm a little bit nervous with. And I think, as we have often seen, these rookie receivers will get so much hype at a certain point in the summer that they'll be overdrafted when people are actually paying attention, because that's the only things they've heard of. And if they go to the worst scenarios, which there are a lot, picking the top 10, I would be a little bit cautious to go ahead and invest in them.
Yeah, I think you raised some good points there, and a lot of stuff that to flesh out before we get there, the combine and everything, find out who's meeting with who, and see where things are leaning. But certainly we'll know a lot more than we do now in a couple of months. I want to talk about, let's see, the Giants. I just got to find my blurb here that I wanted to bring up, and I don't see it here. No. Do I have it here? God, I'm sorry. This is horrible radio. Yeah, I got it. Report in The Athletic, Joe. Joe Schoen, I don't know how to pronounce it.
No, you're right. Yep.
Joe Schoen is still the general manager of the Giants. And he said the potential new head coach for the Giants and the people he's been speaking with, they're very excited about Jaxson Dart. And obviously, if you are named the next head coach with the Giants, you're going to get a pretty exciting offense. You have Dart, Nabers, potentially Wan'Dale Robinson. We'll see if they re-sign him. Theo Johnson, who I like quite a bit, and then the Scadaboo Tracy backfield. And then an offensive line that's not in terrible shape either. So I think it's exciting to see what the Giants are building here. The question here is about Dart. I think that Daboll got fired. A good portion of why he got fired was because he did not exhibit proper care and making sure that he was protecting his quarterback. I think he recognized the way that they win is to unleash Dart and let him use his legs. That's not if you're doing it as much as he did as a young quarterback, number one, you're not evolving as a pocket passer, which you have to do in this league. And number two, you're putting yourself in harm's way a lot. Dart was awesome for fantasy for anybody who had him this year. My concern, and this is probably good for Dart's career, but it's concerning for fantasy if you draft him in the top 10 quarterbacks next year, he may not use his legs. If they have some sort of head coach that is going to take responsibility for Dart's health and making sure he's on the field, we're going to see less design runs. We're going to see him not take off as much. We're going to see him throw the ball away more. And a big part of the reason he was so successful, Joe, was because of those legs. And I am a little bit nervous about Dart being over. I'm excited. I'd love to draft him, but I feel like he's sort of on my list right now of players I'm very worried about people overdrafting him and then him not being able to deliver, not because he doesn't have the talent, but because he's being coached not to do those things.
Well, let's unpack this. There's a couple of things, dude. A, it's ironic that Joe Schoen says there's a bunch of head coaching prospects that are excited about Jaxson Dart because the general manager of the Giants was not excited about the quarterback that he took. He actually pinned that on Brian Daboll as the reason why they traded up for Jaxson Dart. And frankly, I thought the cost to do so was so cheap that it made sense to go ahead if you believed in Jaxson Dart. But Schoen wanted no part of that. I mean, he actually attributed to Brian Daboll as the reason why they took Jaxson Dart, and it's now only retroactively a thing that we can credit Joe Schoen, and I think credit can be in quotes as well too. So it's funny that he's like, well, head coaching prospects come here because we have this Jaxson Dart guy that I didn't really even like when we took. It was a Brian Daboll thing, and now Daboll's gone, but I'm still here. Which, I mean, speaks to, like you alluded to at the very top, it's comical in my mind that the Giants are sticking with this decision that Schoen is going to be your GM. I think the Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney on a national stage scenario is getting messed up as much as they were. Should have been reason enough to go ahead and fire. But yeah, whatever. It's the New York Giants. Let them continue to be inept. I'm fine with that. So let's do this first. Where do you think Jaxson Dart? Let's just say it's gonna be Mike McCarthy. I don't think that's gonna happen. But whatever, like a ho-hum veteran head coach that will be a rah-rah leader guy, not an offensive guru guy, not a defense guy, just somebody ho-hum, whatever it is. Or Joe Brady, right? Offensive coordinator for the Bills.
Bills.
If that is your head coach for the Giants, where do you think Jaxson Dart gets drafted? Let's just do early August when we don't have quite the training camp hype that'll inevitably push him up in a big market like New York. Where do you think Jaxson Dart goes? Because I think that's the first part of this answer.
Yeah, Are you saying among quarterbacks or just
Yes.
rounds?
No. That's just quarterback. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's not top 5, but I think he's fringe top 10.
Really? Okay.
Great, yeah.
So Drake May was, I think, quarterback 14 at various points throughout August. I'll call that draft season. Quarterback 14. If Jaxson Dart got like 85% of Drake May next year in this circumstance, talk about head coach, that's a win for everybody involved. Like, I don't think Jaxson Dart is the level of passer that Drake May is. And I think Jaxson Dart, with the way that he runs and the plays that previously made him successful, would not be able to stay healthy enough in the way that Drake May is. So I think Jaxson Dart is probably more like, let's just say, quarterback 15, 16 in that range, which this past year was Trevor Lawrence. Kyler Murray was above that right now, and I think Kyler Murray was a more exceptional athlete that you could have projected for more rushing yards. So in fantasy, I don't think Jaxson Dart becomes necessarily fringe quarterback 12 unless, and this is the key part for me, there's a dramatic investment in the offensive line. There's an additional weapon added as well, too, on top of Malik Nabers coming back healthy, and we could have a debate if that will happen. And if there is a coordinator guru kind of guy, there isn't a Ben Johnson equivalent, which is my whole frustration with John Harbaugh being fired. But if we can pretend like there is that kind of candidate as head coach that makes Jaxson Dart better, those are the reasons why he gets drafted high. And that's a whole lot of stuff that isn't related to Jaxson Dart. It's my whole problem with this. I don't know if he stays healthy or not. Jaxson Dart has said specifically he won't change his play style. He thinks it's fun to get 17 times concussed during a year. More power to him, I guess, if that's the route that Jaxson Dart wants to take. But in my mind, I don't think he's nearly the level athlete to be the running quarterback that he was this past year. And it was too transparent that Brian Daboll was doing that to save his job. And it's why the Giants fired him, that they put the asset at risk in the way they did. So I don't think he will. I don't think Jaxson Dart wants to develop into that guy. I don't know what coach will make him be that. And I would assume, unless there's significant resources invested, you're going to see Jaxson Dart as more like a fringe quarterback 1 in leagues as a quarterback 1 to start. And I think it would be more concerning that he just never ends up being on a week-to-week basis somebody that you want to be in that position.
Steven Yergalos is in the YouTube chat right now. He thinks round 9 for Dart next year in the FFPC 20 round 12 team leagues. He said hopefully later. And I'm kind of with you, Joe. I mean, like if he's like quarterback 14, 15 off the board, God, I'd love to get, especially if I wait on quarterback and I get a guy like Purdy or something or Knicks, and then I pair that with the Jaxson Dart. That is dynamite combo in best ball leagues, in managed leagues, whatever. I'd be all of it. So I'm very excited. And part of the thing that is going to affect Jaxson Dart's draft status is one Malik Nabers and his health. Now, Nabers said this, told reporters this earlier this week. He said if his body doesn't feel right, he is not going to play week 1 of the NFL season. Mm-hmm. He had surgery on his ACL. He also had surgery on his meniscus. He's 22 years old. The quote from him: "My target date is when my body feels good to get out there and I can continue to be who I am. If my body doesn't feel right week 1, then I'm not going to play." Now, the previous reports we've heard on this, the Giants expected him to be ready for the start of the season. Right. And he is saying it might take a little bit longer. So a couple of different ways to look at this. Here's how I'm looking at it. Number one, super refreshing for a player to say this, right? Normally, we see players like Micah Parsons, right? He tears his ACL and immediately he's posting on Instagram, September, so he's already got a date in mind. But I think this is a very mature thing for Nabers to say, like,
interesting. I disagree, but keep going. Okay, go with this.
This is a long rehab. Okay. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not going to pigeonhole myself, into a date that I'm saying in early January that I'm going to be ready for in August or September. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe I have a setback. Maybe I don't want people knowing I have a setback. You're right. And so I think that he is just going to take the rehab. He's attacking the rehab, I think. He's attacking the rehab, but he's not going to put added pressure on himself to be ready at a certain date. I think that there are a lot of players that try to get back earlier than they should. Like it always seems to me like ahead of schedule is the new on schedule.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's one way to look at it. Now, the other way to look at this too is this knee injury is more serious than we expected. And Nabers is coming out right now just so we don't have our expectations for week one, or nobody has expectations for week one. And this could be a thing that lingers into the season, maybe into October. I don't know. That's another way of looking at it as well. I'm positive on this one. I think it's good, but certainly there is an opposing view.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be pessimistic and negative in nature. The 2014 Seahawks-Packers game broke something inside me that will never come back. And I think this is a selfish thing. Now, I want to be clear. I think it says a lot more about me that I'm viewing it as a selfish statement and like a diva response statement than it should. Like, your take on this is as correct as mine, which is to say, we don't know. There's no idea. All I know is from the media tidbits that I've seen of Malik Nabers, it never has felt like it's a team thing. A lot of like, I didn't get enough targets, or right, the offense isn't using me more. And when I see that and then read this statement, to me, it's like, I will play when I'm ready. I won't be rushed by the team. I think it is refreshing in a way that a player has agency like that. Is Malik Nabers a receiver that we need to just grant that to, though? Like, I mean, he had one really good rookie year. We think he's one of the better receivers in the league. He was certainly a late first-round pick for a reason, because what we projected him to be within this Giants offense. He's had that attitude since the draft, and this is not a Shedeur Sanders conversation, but there are people that like Shedeur Sanders for that attitude. I'm not one of them. It's a turnoff to me when I feel like the player isn't a part of the team, especially in a football sport, which I think is the most team-oriented of all. Whether it's tempering expectations, which is the positive way of putting it, or I think more so making it like, I will be the guy that decides it. You guys don't. Nobody else will be a part of that. I don't really like that response. I would more rather be like, anything can happen in my recovery. This is a serious injury. I obviously want to be at the best of my physical abilities, but I'm going to be out there to be for my team, and I want to be out there week one if I can. Right? Like, you can phrase it in such a way where you're still, I think, tempering expectations, reinforcing what the team has already told us, but also not making it like, I will decide kind of thing, even though we all know the player should be the one, and I think oftentimes is deciding when they are or are not out there. And if Malik Nabers doesn't want to rush things because he has his whole career in front of him, I understand that. But I don't know if it has to be framed in this way, where it should still be about the team and not Malik Nabers.
Perhaps if I didn't like that Malik Nabers IHOP commercial so much, I would have the same viewpoint as you on this show. No, but you make some good points. And so in your mind, is there, like, I brought up the whole, maybe this knee injury is more serious than they're letting on. Do you think there's any truth to that at all?
So, I mean, Brandon Ayuk's a perfect example. I think Joe Mixon will be one that people popularly point to as well, too. Both those injuries happened this past year. We had every sort of commitment from the team, from the Texans and the 49ers, that both those guys would be available. There was a random Instagram comment that my Niners fan friend in my life told me, like, in September. He's like, Ayuk couldn't even get out of his bed to go pee in the morning after like 7 weeks of surgery. That was alarming, and that's why I didn't take it. I'm like, why didn't you share that with me? I was all in on Brandon Ayuk this year. What are you talking about? And it proved to be true. So, like, maybe that is Malik Nabers saying that now. Whereas conversely with Joe Mixon, we heard from his camp very sparsely, but we heard from his camp throughout the summer. Certainly Texans, like, everything will be fine, until there was like random medical reports leaked more or less, and that the fantasy community specifically kind of clung to them, that he wasn't going to play all year. And that proved to be true as well. If it's a more serious injury than we thought, and it certainly was a gruesome injury, I think like visually watching that, if that ended up being more serious than a regular ACL tear like Micah Parsons, nobody would disagree with that. We still had a longer ramp than a few of these other injuries that we just referenced here before. So I don't know how serious it needs to be for me to think that he won't be available. And I don't think we'll ever get that information anyway.
Yeah. That's a great point. We're kind of drafting blind a little bit, which is the way we'd normally do it. That was week 4 of the season that he got hurt. And, quite frankly, he put up a clunker against Kansas City, but he had a good game going against the Chargers before he got hurt. That followed up 5 for 71 and 9 for 167. He had basically played a quarter and a half with Jaxson Dart. I was very excited for my neighbor squads once Dart got out there, and didn't work out, but that's how fantasy is. Listen, fantasy does not have to be that way for you. The world famous FFPC Playoff Challenge live right now at myffpc.com. No draft, no salary cap. There are no convoluted rules with this. Pick 12 players. You can enter for $35 to win $100,000, or you can enter for $200 to win $500,000, one player per NFL team. So if you want to go with a guy like Trevor Lawrence, you can't have Brian Thomas Jr. If you want to go with A.J. Brown, you can't have Saquon Barkley. MyFFPC.com is where to go, myffpc.com. It is Super Wild Card Weekend. It is playoff fantasy football night in America. Joe Bartel from RotoWire and I will come back to preview all the games this weekend. We'll also touch on the Seahawks and Broncos who have the weekend off. And don't forget, coming up in about 25, 30 minutes or so, we're going to start building some lineups right here live on the FFPC Insider Access Show on the Better Sports Network. We'll step out, catch our breath. Don't go anywhere. We resume right after this.
What's up, guys? Andrew Cooper here, Fantasy Alarm, and it's that time of year at the FFPC Playoff Challenge. This is one of my very favorite contests. Forget about all your redraft leagues. Forget about DFS. This is one last chance for glory, and it comes during the NFL playoffs. Yes, you can go in with no salaries, no drafts, no convoluted stuff, and create your lineup to carry you through the playoffs. The only rule, you cannot pick two players from the same team, which I kind of like. I quietly don't want to get crushed by some stack of Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua. You have to pick one or the other. That's it. You pick 12 players. Try and set yourself up for glory here. And there's a lot on the line. Two different contests, $35 contest or the $200 contest with a $500,000 on the line in this one. It is one of the premier events in this fantasy football space. If you win this one, you go down in fantasy football history with the other gold-plated names at the FFPC. So get your contest locked in now before they fill, because I tell you what, they will. If you want to get into the FFPC Playoff Challenge, go to myffpc.com, sign up now, and you can use promo code ALARM, ALARM. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more.
Welcome back to FFPC Insider Access here live on the Better Sports Network. Talking with Joe Bartel from RotoWire. Before we get into the FFPC Playoff Challenge and the games going on this weekend, Joe, I meant to ask you this at the top of the show. You're not just a fantasy football guy with RotoWire.
No, I actually am in charge of hiring and training all of our remote writers. I go through our intern process as well, too. So operations manager is my technical title. I am also technically the esports editor. That's actually where I started at RotoWire 10 years ago. It's where I rose through the ranks. Now, thankfully, esports isn't as big of a deal as it was during COVID, and I've been far more NFL diligent since then. But Dynasty related, certainly, I cover all different sports on the Angel Fire radio show, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SiriusXM every Saturday as well, too, Channel 87. So we have a lot of different things that I do at RotoWire. I'm privileged to have this opportunity from the fantasy sports field. This was back in high school, a job that I thought was too much of a dream job. Like, I always have to center myself. I can't have too high of expectations to be able to do fantasy sports. So I went to college just to do sports journalism. I didn't think this is possible, but it's been awesome now, 10 years at RotoWire, and I would love to keep doing another 10 more.
So we have Mr. Bakes-a-lot in the YouTube chat, and this is good for anybody who's wondering. He says, are you hiring? I am a decent analyst in offense and IDP statistics. So for anybody like Mr. Bakes-a-lot who would like to work for RotoWire, what's the best thing for them to do?
So this is a good news, bad news thing, but I have been so good at my job that I have gotten us probably to a spot where we're not singularly looking for one person who does one sport. Previously, when I took over probably about 5 years ago with this, I think if you were independently good at just NFL or just MLB or just NBA, I would have been very comfortable being yeah, we need more talented people like that. Come on in. Now, at this point, with the lack of needs that we really have at a lot of these writer spots, you really should be well-versed and defined in multiple sports, because it's easier for you to have work for us the entire year. We wouldn't just have you do IDP stats, for example, not just Mr. Bakes-a-lot, but anybody else for NFL season then cut bait. I don't really like to have that happen. So ideally, you also know baseball pretty well, or the NBA season, obviously incredibly long. Could that extend into another one? We have a lot of college sports stuff. If there's a fantasy sport, you can bet that we're doing some sort of content related to that. And I think being well-versed in multiple sports now is probably the ideal applicant that I'll be looking for. That being said, overall, not very much. I mean, we have, I would say, hundreds of applicants per month, And I won't give the exact number, but not a lot get brought in per sport per year. So it's one of those that if you're on my radar, that's great. You'll have my email address as well too. Always happy to reach out for more talent, but not like a ton of people that we're looking for at this time.
I will say there was many years ago on my High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour podcast, I had one Ryan Poole on. Who was another Wisconsin guy. And also after I had him on a couple of years later, he got a gig with RotoWire.
Literally my desk mate. Yes.
There you go. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. He's doing fantasy football stuff. And then I was like checking out no, he does fantasy football. Yes. But he's golf and he's doing basketball as well. I had no idea.
He's in charge of all of our DFS stuff. And Ryan's awesome just overall and a lot of that stuff. But yeah, I mean you are required to wear a lot of hats at RotoWire, which is great because I like to. Like that's one of those things. I never feel like my job is mundane in any way. I think with all the NFL coverage I do, it certainly gets long during the NFL season, and I really find this part of things more rewarding at certain ventures of the NFL season because I love interacting and bringing on new talent. We've had a lot of really successful people come through, and I'm excited for what we have right now at RotoWire. But yeah, I mean, Ryan's a perfect example where he could easily do one sport, but because he's so talented at a bunch of other ones, he's been really useful for RotoWire in that regard. Yeah,
he's awesome. Fantastic. Let's get in to some of these playoff games going on Super Wildcard Weekend. And how they will affect your submission to the FFPC Playoff Challenge for those of you who are participating, which is hopefully all of you. Rams and Panthers are going to kick it off at 4:30 Eastern on Saturday. And I think dependent upon how you feel the Rams are going to do in the postseason changes the way you think about which Ram you're going to play. The Rams were the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl just probably 3-4 weeks ago, right? And now they have the third shortest odds, but they're the 5 seed in the NFC. Now, if you believe that they're going to go on a run, Joe, and you tell me if you agree with this, if you believe they're going to go on a run and get to the Super Bowl, then I think Stafford and Nakua are probably the two choices you have to decide between. If you think they're one and done, or maybe just 2 games and then out, then I think it comes back to guys like Kyron Williams, Devontae Adams, maybe even a super pivot to Blake Corum or Harrison Mevis. But that's the way I look at it. If you are structuring, and you should fill out your bracket first before you start picking your players. If you have the Rams in the Super Bowl, I think it's got to be Stafford or Nakua, and probably Stafford, given that Nakua is probably going to be super high owned in this competition.
So you don't know this much about me, Eric. Strategy is my brand. Like, strategy conversation is the thing that I love. Because it's ambiguous, that there isn't really a right answer. I thrive in those scenarios because I hate being I could challenge people just fine with it, but I hate feeling like I need to. Maybe it's the Midwestern nice a little bit. Like I don't think there needs to be a right or wrong answer as often in sports as it feels like it's defined, especially from the national media perspective. And I think that the talking head shows, things like that. I love strategy talk. When to draft a quarterback in best ball. What's the right idea for dynasty trade? Zero running back strat. Like this is everything I love to do on my Sirius XM shows. Basically all I write about as well too before the season starts. So putting this show sheet together and kind of looking at the questions we had and the ideas, I was just excited and frankly like a little giddy to do this because there's a whole lot of strategy in this that I think there's a number of right answers for it. I want to be clear. I imagine the listeners know this a bit more than I do, but is it the point totals aren't doubled, right? Every single week you advance.
No,
it's just like
the only time they're doubled is for the Super Bowl.
Okay. Well, I didn't even know that. Okay, so that's important. So realistically, you need to get the Super Bowl teams, or at least one of the teams, right to be able to be in the big money spot. Okay, in my mind, I think the Rams are the prohibitive favorite to make it to the Super Bowl from the NFC side of things. We have watched in college football, right? 7 of the 8 teams that have had a bye week have lost in their first round they've played. I know that college football is not like football. I have specifically watched my Packers have bye weeks and look completely flat. So often, Eric. So often. And it has gotten to a point where I've been converted. I mean, like, ideally you would love to have all your guys rested and then play at peak performance. But the idea of one team having gutted through this playoff win, getting all the momentum in there, figuring out what works, getting the players' confidence up, going against a team that is just softer, it's not like a neutral, I'm sorry, it's not a negative term, but it's just softer because of those things they have not done. Mm-hmm. Getting a tune-up game like against this Panthers team, yes, they beat my Packers, it's fine. This tune-up game against this Panthers team,
depressing. Super depressing.
I thankfully didn't go to that one. I thankfully didn't go to the Ravens one either. I was actually set to do so. Then I had to have a Sirius XM show scheduled at a different time. But I have thankfully avoided some of those depressing ones. I mean, yeah, that you have a tune-up game, I think matters a whole lot. Now, if everything goes the way you'd assume, the Rams are facing the Seahawks potentially. I mean, we'll get to the games a little bit later on that maybe change that. And the Seahawks are a good team. They know each other from a divisional perspective. It's not like the Rams will get a 1-over on them. And even if the Rams go against like the Eagles, for example, well, those two teams played earlier this year, and it was a blocked field goal away from the Rams winning. I think that was a pretty close contest too. I feel much more confident about the offense that the Rams run, the play caller and head coach that his teams won't fold over, Matt LaFleur. And I feel really good about the playmakers that the defense has. It is not like the AFC where the Broncos and Texans defense could singularly win them games to get them to that point. I don't think there's a team in the NFC that is capable of doing that. So in my mind, I think the Rams are the prohibitive favorite. I wasn't necessarily trying to find the different tournament lineup changes with the Nacua part. To me, it was Nacua all the way. And I think as we put together our lineup a little bit later in the show, I think it'll make more sense. Like I actually feel pretty certain, which is, always a death sentence for these kinds of things. I feel pretty certain that going Stafford is the wrong route because I know what Nacua will do in one or possibly two or more games for that Rams offense. And I think there are a number of other quarterbacks that could do what Stafford is expected to do if you have him. So I would rather have Nacua. I think the Rams get at least 2 games. And I think they are the definitive favorite of the NFC because they get this tune-up game against the Panthers.
So can you tell yourself a story? Because obviously you have to pick some fades. You have to pick 2 hard fades, 2 soft fades. The hard fades are teams you will have no players from. The soft fades are usually like your kicker, your defense, what have you. Not always, but sometimes. So when it comes to the Panthers, can you tell yourself a story that maybe you soft fade them and maybe actually use Teterow and McMillan in a game that maybe the Panthers have to throw to come back in? Or maybe you want to predict the upset here, and maybe it's Dowdle. You pick and you get 2 games out of Rico Dowdle, because if the Panthers win, it's probably because they're running the football well, taking the air out of the ball, keeping Stafford off the field, and that means a heavy workload for Dowdle. Now, I've just said 2 scenarios that are not likely, but they are possible. What about you? Do you feel like and also, Joe, consider what the field's going to do, because I think most of the field is going to hard fade the Panthers completely.
Yeah, I understand why you would want to pivot from the field. It is technically possible, Eric, that I get a date with Sydney Sweeney. Like, technically, there is a realm in which that would happen. I would imagine every other man on Earth probably is eviscerated. There's only Joe Bartel left on this planet, and even then, it's not a guarantee. I don't like going in that level. Like, I if the Panthers had not beat the Rams earlier this year, maybe it's a little bit different. Or if we were guaranteed monsoon conditions, which I think was it's why the Panthers ended up winning in the first place. Fine. None of that stuff I know is going to be on the table. So I don't even want to deal with the possibility or trying to navigate the strategy aspect of it. Maybe my puny brain just can't comprehend the ways in which the Panthers could win. And I know that there's actually a lot of like positive history for the sub 500 team winning their first game in the postseason. The Beastquake game is probably the most notable one. I won't entertain that. And if I lose my $200 because the Rams choked, as a Midwest guy, I'll be very happy to watch the West Coast team suffer just a little bit when they get all the glory of the Dodgers and everything else like that.
It's interesting to think about because if I think that Carolina gives the Rams a fight. Now, they may peter out in the 3rd or 4th quarter, but I think this game is going to be closer than people are thinking. Just my take on it. Let's talk about our Packers here, because they go right after this game and 7:00 on, or I guess it would be 8:00 Eastern, right?
Yeah.
On Saturday night.
Amazon. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So Josh Jacobs, I'm not going to say he's healthy, but I will say he should be healthier. Mm-hmm. Hard to soak my quarterback on my roster to a quarterback who is the 7th seed or the quarterback for a 7th seed. Christian Watson's been coming on. There's no Tucker Kraft. No other wide receiver really a step forward. We have not seen Jaden Reed take a big leap in production since he's come back. Is it Christian Watson or bust for your Packer?
No, I took Josh Jacobs, or I think that's the way that I would go with this. I understand going with Christian Watson as well, too. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't do that. If the Packers were to beat the Bears, they are guaranteed to go against the Seahawks the next round, right? So I'm thinking about this best-case scenario where they end up winning the game. You get 2 games out of whatever Packer you have in your lineup. You get 12 picks, 14 teams. You can have 2 teams completely out. I think the way the Packers offense even projects in one game against the Bears, you'd probably want to have some piece of it. Christian Watson's the better play against the Bears. I absolutely agree with that. I think that secondary is not very good. They don't have a great pass rush. And provided there isn't weather, although I was seeing at least yesterday there could be inclement weather and potentially a lot of wind and snow for that game on Saturday night, which would make me nervous. The Christian Watson should have explosive plays, and they will be capable of making those happen. Josh Jacobs will be good enough. And I think having Jacobs back and theoretically as healthy as he's been over the past month now makes that red zone offense better. And more importantly, if the Packers were to upset the Seahawks, which would not happen, but if they were to, it's because Josh Jacobs had a singularly big game as an athlete or as a skill guy, whether it's a passer or a runner. That's what I'm trying to go with. So I think Jacobs is probably the answer I'd go with more, because I don't think Watson does well enough against the Seahawks to justify what is a real opportunity for an upset. I mean, the Packers in some books opened as the favorites over the Bears. Yeah. I understand the 2-7 seed dynamic. I get that entirely. As a Packer fan, I'm bracing myself for a loss because I mentally have to do that, given how bad it could be for my well-being if the Bears were to beat the Packers. But I think Jacobs is actually a really interesting play as well with what they could do in round 2.
What's interesting, and I've been watching this point spread, Packers open up at 1.5. Then it flipped to the Bears 1.5, which was a weird flip. And now I just checked it again this morning, and it's back to the Packers 1.5. So I don't know what's going on. There must be some weird smart money, or maybe not so smart money coming. I have no idea. Flip side, Chicago, they could be one and done, which is weird to say from a 2 seed, but we saw it with Dallas a couple of years ago against the Packers.
Only 2 seed to lose 2-7 seed.
There you go. Mm-hmm. And when it comes down to it, I think this is a rookie play. Like, it's got to be Loveland. It's got to be Burden, right? I mean, I don't want to hitch my wagon to Caleb Williams. I think you could make a case for Swift, but Monangai seems to be cannibalizing him quite a bit more than I would have imagined was going to take place. And Loveland is hitting a crescendo. Tight end premium scoring in the FFPC. I really like him. And the other aspect, too, with Loveland, there's not a ton of great tight ends in the playoffs this year. There's no Kelsey. There's no Mark Andrews. So I don't know. Maybe there's more of a premium on Loveland. How do you feel about the Bears?
So you mentioned the key part for me. There was not a lot of great tight end options available. Kittle's the best one, I think. Maybe I'm not thinking of one, but I thought Kittle's the best one, and I think the Niners are going to lose. I mean, we'll talk about the Eagles-Niners game in a little bit. I think the Niners lose that one. So to me, I kind of was fine punting the tight end position. I don't think Loveland gets enough receptions to really take advantage of the extra half point per catch here in the FFPC. And I don't know if a lot of other tight ends do either. So I actually think either DeAndre Swift or Kyle Monangai might be the right call. We know the Packers defense is atrocious. Goodness, I'm blanking no Devontae White obviously hurts things. I would hope that Rashawn Gary is benched. I don't know if he will be, but if Rashawn Gary's out there, that's also net negative along the defense as well too. The Bears will be able to run the football even if the Packers are committed to stopping it. That was the second Packers-Bears game where in the second half of the first Packers-Bear game, the Bears nearly come back because they entirely relied on the run. I think the Bears will be committed to that. I don't think Ben Johnson will fall into any trap holes necessarily that the Packers set for them, and he will stay committed to that. And in that regard, I think DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai, either one of those are going to get enough carries. Swift is a explosive enough athlete relative to Kyle Monangai that I think as the pass catcher of those two, I like Swift a little bit. And again, if we're just trying to project what will happen in the next round, which is, again, what my P brain has been doing, we watched it on Black Friday. The Bears just completely annihilate the Eagles.
And that was
from
in
a rushing
Philly.
Perspective.
Yeah, that was Philly. That was in Philly, too. And if they play each other in the second round, that'll be at Soldier Field.
In Soldier Field. And a frothing fan base that I hope gets to fall completely flat in their face. I don't know. I think there maybe is an argument to say Kyle Monangai will be the less drafted of the two, but whatever one you think is the less drafted is probably the right answer as the sub fade or whatever you call it, like the slight fade option. Because I don't know if the Packers beat the Bears necessarily. I do feel more comfortable saying if we have to project an upset, the Packers beating the Bears is the one I feel most comfortable doing. But I would really push on. I think one of the running backs is possibly the option over Colston Loveland.
Let's get to Sunday's games. We're going to kick it off with a banger. 1 p.m. Eastern. It is Buffalo in Duval, as the would say. Josh Allen has been a very popular pick as quarterback for a lot of entries over the last several years in this competition, Joe. However, that's when the Bills were a 1 seed. That's when they were a 2 seed. That's when they were a 3 seed. This year, they are a 6 seed on the road in Jacksonville. Now, if I remember correctly, and I don't have the window open anymore, I'll just quick reopen it and vamp until I get there. The Bills are indeed a 1.5 point favorite in this game on the road in Jacksonville, who ripped up Denver on the road. I mean, they look really, really good right now.
Oh, yeah.
But when you consider that if they do get past Jacksonville, and I've heard people saying that this is the de facto AFC championship game, Buffalo and
kind of agree.
If they get by Jacksonville, boy, Allen could look really, really good at quarterback here.
Absolutely could. In past years with the Bills, the number 1 seed, you were drafting Josh Allen and you were still taking a 0 that first week, right? Because he wouldn't play. And like that's the consequential difference of what Josh Allen is capable of doing. I like having the quarterbacks be players that are theoretically available for all 4 weeks of the postseason because they're the ones that require the least amount of other things working in their favor to be able to compile points. And so Josh Allen is attractive in that way. I like when you initially posed posed the question, I assumed Josh Allen would be one of the more highly drafted quarterbacks. Like I think Matthew Stafford's probably near the top. One of Bo Nix or Sam Darnold probably is in that mix. And then I figured Josh Allen would be there because Josh Allen will possibly give you 4 straight weeks of production. I don't know if this is the de facto Super Bowl game. I just don't feel good enough saying that this year with the matchups that still could come. But I do think whoever wins this game wins multiple games. So I just get a little bit concerned that if I'm the Bills, this is maybe the team I would have least liked to face.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know off the top of your head, Eric. I actually was very surprised by this. Do you know who allows the fewest rushing yards per game in the NFL this year?
I'm going to guess Jacksonville.
You're correct.
Yeah.
At 85.5 rushing yards. Like I knew the Jags defense was good enough because they're opportunistic. I know that their middle linebackers get a bunch of interceptions and like the Bears, for example, got a lot of turnovers this year. I hope Al Harris becomes the Packers defensive coach, for example. I'd love to have Al Harris return back, but he's so great at getting.
You're assuming Halfley leaves in that scenario.
Well, so my perfect one, Eric, Matt LaFleur's trade for a first-round pick to some team. We promote Halfley to be the head coach, and then Al Harris becomes defensive coordinator. We get Mike McDaniel as offensive coordinator. I've got this wish cast everywhere. Don't you worry. Like we've already put the dreams to that at least a little bit, but no, I don't think that happens. I thought the Jags defense was much more Bears related, where it's just operating off of turnovers, not the best team against opposing running backs. And James Cook was awesome this year. I don't think the Jags necessarily stopped James Cook overall. But if you're taking and negating the one thing that the Bills offense really enters every game as a positive, what you're left with is Josh Allen having to do heroics, which he can do in a weird away environment that I don't think really is beneficial to that passing game. So, and then the worst thing that you want from the Bills defense is a team that can run effectively. Well, guess what? The Jags and Travis Etienne are one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL and can use Etienne in a way that Bucky Irving last year was used to. So if the Bills beat the Jags, I wouldn't be surprised. But you could argue this is the Jags' best matchup and also the best chance to take away a team that could potentially stop them in their route to the Super Bowl this year.
One of these teams defends the run really well. One of these teams cannot defend the run either. Maybe it's Josh Allen. That's the Fugazi quarterback play here. And it could set up to be exciting, but man, it's Jacksonville game. That's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. So we know that if the Jaguars win this game, a lot of people will have them going to the bowl, as the kids say. So many options on this team. I think if you're projecting Jacksonville in the Super Bowl, it would make sense to have Trevor Lawrence as your quarterback. But if you don't, if you think New England or Denver or Buffalo or somebody else gets there, then it becomes more interesting because there is a cavalcade of options for Jacksonville. Brian Thomas Jr. has been coming on. Jacoby Myers has been awesome since he got traded from Las Vegas. Parker Washington has really been white hot, and consider that you action scoring in the FFPC. So if he returns for a punt for a touchdown, you're going to get the points for that as well. You have Brenton Strange, who's looked pretty good coming off IR. Travis Etienne in the backfield. I don't know, man. Would you lean one way or the other? I mean, I feel like if you're filling out multiple entries, you just kind of pick and choose your Jacksonville players here. None of these guys really stand out to me, except that all of them I like as solid plays.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to troll, but I think like Cam Little as a kicker, right? You could get the long field goal points as well too. I wouldn't do that, and I guess we'll kind of explain our strategy here in a little bit later in the show. I thought the first answer was probably ETN, because I thought effectively guaranteed this week I know what I'm getting out of him. And then if they were to advance the following week, like I feel comfortable saying ETN will be a bigger factor of it. But the tournament play aspect of this might be make 3 different entries and pick 3 different receivers between BTJ, Parker Washington, Jacoby Myers. Or in my mind, it's more of like Parker Washington, Jacoby Myers, and Brenton Strange. The 1.5 point per reception I think benefits Strange the most. I would be willing to bet on a per game basis he probably gets the most receptions of any tight end outside of George Kittle. And again, I think that the Niners lose to the Eagles this week. So like I actually kind of wonder if Strange is one of those. I still believe it's probably best to punt the position that we don't think is very good overall. But I expect Strange to get involved quite a bit. So like Parker Washington is the biggest upside. You have the return potential, like you mentioned as well, too. Jacoby Myers is probably the most consistent. I don't think people are thinking about him in the same vein as Puka Nacua and Jackson Smith-Njigba. And you start 2 receivers and then multiple flexes. Because you only start 2 receivers, theoretically, there's less receivers just in the pool, and Jacksonville's already diversifying as is. I don't know. I have my. I don't want to spoil it because I don't want to like say every pick that I'm going to do. But I think the Jags receivers, if you want to go one direction, if you're only spinning one lineup, I don't mind sort of just taking the risk and saying one of those guys is probably the right call.
I have a Jacksonville receiver on my team, so it'll be interesting to see if we're on this one. So that is the second game of the triple header on no, that's the first game of the triple header on Sunday. The second game is the Niners and the Eagles. The NFC West looks like it looks like the NFC North did last year, right?
Yeah.
And you could make a case that any one of these teams, especially with how flat the competition is this year, you could make a case that any one of these teams gets to the Super Bowl. How many games do you think the Niners play if you only had one entry, Joe? That's the first question. And then based on that, who is your Niner? Because there's some options here with me. I think we could throw Pearsall out because we won't even know what his status is by the time that these lock. Kittle, McCaffrey, Juwan Jennings, Brock Purdy obviously would be an option as well.
Yeah, I'll give a long way around to answer this. So I made it to the final of the $15 million DraftKings Best Ball on one entry. I did it for content purposes for RotoWire. We live streamed it, and it had a team of Josh Jacobs, Javonte Williams, Bijan Robinson. The quarterbacks are pretty good. Daniel Jones, Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence. There's a lot of Jags going to be in this as well, too. We had Chris Olave, Devonta Smith. The receivers weren't great, but I had JSN as like a 4th-round value. Wow. And some of the tight ends like Hunter Henry and Bryce Strange. So we made it to the final round. I ended up winning. I took 126 out of the 1,000 contestants, so it was like $7,500. It was a great birthday. My birthday was on that Monday where Bijan goes nuclear. So very, very, very good birthday for me. My wife, who I believe is the good luck charm, and the only reason that anything good happens sports-wise for me is because she's possibly watching, kind of napping, maybe reading, whatever it is. We had watched the Niners-Colts game the week before because that was the final game on Monday. And then we had watched the Niners-Bears game the week prior or the week after. That defense is awful. That defense is one of the worst defenses since I've watched my Packers year in and year out during the Aaron Rodgers heyday trot out one of the worst defenses you've ever seen. Like there's times that Falcons-Packers playoff game from like half decade ago now at this point that I'm like, wow, there will never be a worse defense than what we're putting together out there. The Niners defense is atrocious. you could argue that the Eagles' offense is the exact same, but from an offensive perspective, that they are actively sabotaging themselves. And in that way, I think it's a good spot for the Niners. If they win against any other team, I would say they are definitively going to lose. And I trust Kyle Shanahan. I think the way Brock Purdy's been playing, I have a lot of confidence that the Niners will score points. If they can score, let's just say 21, is that enough to upset Kevin Petula? I don't know if the Eagles can mess this up. I was going to say a different word, but I don't know if they can mess this up, right? And even if the Eagles can get a few stops, that's all it's going to really take against this Niners defense, which is allowing more 5-yard out routes than I've ever seen in my entire life right now. So I don't think the Niners have any chance to win this. I would have felt a little bit better if they're going to try to win a 45-42 game against the Seahawks or the Rams. I think I would have taken the Niners to beat the Panthers, although I would have been a little bit more nervous about that one, for example. I just don't think the defense is at all effective enough to be able to win multiple postseason games, especially against a team like the Eagles, who's really, really good too. So at least could be good offensively. I think you just kind of go all in then and say, I mean, Christian McCaffrey's the play that I would make on this. I don't want to go George Kittle. I don't want to have a one-and-done quarterback or potential that has a defense that'll just let him down on Brock Purdy. I kind of think it's interesting, like, if the Niners make the Super Bowl, Ricky Pearsall is probably a big part of that.
Yeah,
you would have gotten it correct because nobody else would then pick him because of the injuries. But I just don't know how that defense allows for that to occur. So I don't think there's any other pick besides Christian McCaffrey. Truthfully, I don't know how to entertain any other one because I don't believe the Niners will be advancing much more than this upcoming game. And I want Christian McCaffrey, who scores the most points in that scenario.
Yeah, get the volume guy. Get the guy who's going to score the most. If they're only playing one game, then he will be the correct player to have on your roster. Now, the Eagles are the defending champs, but they kind of limped in a little bit.
Kind of?
Well, I just think of like that 1 year where they started off, what was it, 10-1?
Yeah.
And then that was limping in. I mean, that was really, really wretched end of the season. So the question here is, Kevin Petullo has been this whipping boy all year. Eagles fans, fantasy players, nobody likes this guy seemingly. And I'm wondering if there's some sort of switch that will be flipped here in the postseason. If Sirianni turns up the pressure on this guy and say, hey, listen, we need to make our best players, or we need to have our best players being in the best position to make big explosive plays. That's how you win football games in the postseason in the NFL. There's no shortage of talent. I think that the big four, so to speak, Hurts, Barkley, Smith, Brown, they're all viable. I don't know if I could go with Goddard here as a pivot play.
Thought about it, yeah.
Those top four are very interesting. And I think that if you are projecting the Eagles to be out early, and you said, how can they screw this up? Well, leave it to Sirianni. Don't leave it to Sirianni. I never liked that guy, and I've been watching Hard Knocks, and I'm starting to like him a little bit more, just a little bit. I still don't like him all that much. But Petullo, I think, is the problem here. I just feel like in the Eagles' losses this year, A.J. Brown's really balled out. Like, when the Philly loses, A.J. Brown probably had a good game. And when they win, he probably did not have a good game. And I'm wondering if there's a correlation with that in the postseason, especially if Philly loses in the second round or even the first round. Maybe we're looking at a big performance from A.J. Brown. How do you look at the skill position guys for Philly in the playoff challenge?
So I'm a big Bill Simmons guy. His content lately has been so Patriots and Celtics heavy that I'm just nauseous at how often he finds a way to work them in. I'm prefacing that to say I apologize if you guys don't want to hear more Packer talk, but of recent memory, can you recall a coordinator that was as worse as, I think it was Drayton, the special teams guy for the Packers, or more specifically Joe Barry? I
was going to say Joe Barry.
Okay. Did any sort of like, oh, head coach, get it together, guys. Did that fix anything for the Packers? No. You are what you are when you enter the postseason. So I don't think the offense will suddenly become what they were when they just ran roughshod throughout the postseason last year and pretty convincingly won the Super Bowl. Kellen Moore's not walking through that door. I don't think they can bring in Mike McDaniel to just be this super guru, even though he just got fired by the Dolphins. And it'd be kind of interesting to see if they Weekend at Bernie's replaced Kevin Petullo, offensive coordinator.
But didn't they do that with Fangio? I want to say.
Well, yeah, he came in. Well, I was thinking more like Robert Saleh when he joined the Packers just recently from But I think Fangio is probably a fine call too. But I don't know how that works. I can't can't fathom that. Again, maybe it's just my puny brain that I can't get there. But you're right. So I just talked about the 5-yard out routes being available literally against anybody. I think you could run a 5-yard out route and probably get at least one catch against the Niners defense, at least the ones I've been watching the past month. In that scenario, A.J. Brown does well. Devonta Smith can probably do well too. You theoretically just can't do that every play because Saquon Barkley is an established threat as well. The nucleus to make that work is Jalen Hurts. So again, I talked about earlier, I want a quarterback that I feel pretty comfortable is playing at least one additional game, if not more. And I think Jalen Hurts is singularly the catalyst for any positive scenario that you can make it for the Eagles offense. Saquon Barkley goes great, or goes nuclear. Awesome. It's then down the 1 yard line and Jalen Hurts punches it in. It's 4 points per passing touchdown. Well, it doesn't matter because Jalen Hurts gets more rushing touchdowns anyway than anybody else. Like you're kind of benefiting that scenario. And I think you're probably saying they're going to win at least one game so that defense does well too. So if there's one thing that could change and make the Eagles offense better than what they were at most points of this season, it's Jalen Hurts being mobile, because what does it matter? We don't have to save his health anyway. There was a quote earlier today about how Hurts kind of was asked, you didn't run as much this year. He said, well, the scheme and offensive coordinator had that call. We didn't do any design runs, and I just had to live with it. And it's like, ugh, God, these vibes are bad. Come on, guys. You're playing a couple days. But that could be the change, having Jalen Hurts be more mobile, because this is your season. You have to do something. Maybe Hurts being a more rushing a threat is the way I kind of convince myself to do that.
The game on Sunday night is Chargers-Patriots. It's the other 2-7 matchup here. The latest we have on, and we'll talk Chargers here first, Joe. The latest we have on Omarion Hampton is that he is dealing with an injury right now. And you probably know this better than me as far as what his status was. Okay. So did not practice. That was today. No practice for him. Greg Roman, who's the offensive coordinator, said before practice that Hampton would be involved in some capacity in practice. Instead, he was just off to the side all day. Roman also said that Hampton is, quote, working through his process with the medical group, and is ready mentally with the game plan. So it sounds like he's going to play, but it could be a week without practice for him. And given how the Chargers have spread the ball around to QJ, to Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen, Oronde Gadsden, and not really the highest volume passing offense you'd probably like to see, Hampton is sort of an attractive choice had it not been for this injury.
Right.
How would you handle him in this competition, given that they don't play until Sunday night?
I think you used the term earlier, soft fade. If you think the Chargers offense is good enough that they can keep pace with the Patriots, and I do, Hampton's really attractive. He really is, because he's been kind of the neutralizer for how bad that offensive line is. He's not a great pass blocker. I mean, it was ironic that he ends up being the second running back drafted. Travion Henderson, who is going to be his rookie running back opponent here this week, was billed as the better pass blocking running back of that class. And there'll be advanced metrics and PFF stuff that state that Henderson didn't do very good at that this year. I'm not a good enough analyst to be able to tell you one way or another. But like Hampton, as a pass catcher, as a checkdown option, gets a lot of volume. And we know that Greg Roman has had that at various points within his offense. If you can have the Justice Hill and Derrick Henry combo together, which is what I think Omarion Hampton is for that offense, that's really attractive. But being banged up is tough. I would be much more interested in taking Omarion Hampton if you could convince me the Chargers would beat the Patriots. And maybe there is something to that. The Chargers have not been great traveling West Coast to East Coast. We talked about Jaxson Dart earlier. That was Jaxson Dart's first win. His first start was when the Chargers traveled to the Giants. I very vividly remember telling people who were playing Survivor, don't take the Chargers. Your oldest better in your life would always mention the West Coast to East Coast travel. Don't do it. And of course, the Chargers end up losing, and people get really angry. I'm like, well, I get to do the I told you so thing and whatever else. I'm very nervous, and it's been often discussed and ink shed on the Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater injuries. There's nothing the Chargers can do to make up for that offensive line lacking that they have had. So I don't think Omarion Hampton is a guy that I would go with, because I don't know how they end up winning this football game. other than a Drake May implosion. And I just don't think the way he's been playing this year, that seems at all possible. Because the Chargers defense is good. It's just I don't think the offense can score enough points to keep pace with, I think, what May and company can do.
The aspect of the Patriots that you bring up, I think, is interesting because there are a lot of people that think that the Patriots are going to the Super Bowl, but some Jaguars, some Bills, some Broncos fans would probably disagree on that. If you are projecting New England in the Super Bowl, I think May makes a lot of sense. However, if you're not, what's the pivot on New England? Is it the defense? Is it Stephon Diggs? Is it Henderson? Is it Ramondre Stevenson, given how he's come on the last couple of weeks? Joe, when you look at the non-Drake May players on New England, who stands out there for you?
I don't think this is a much different conversation than what we're doing with Jacksonville. But if you're doing multiple different lineups, the idea of putting in one with Drake May, one with Stephon Diggs, one with Henderson with the explosive capabilities, the pass catcher, again, kind of like the rationale for Jalen Hurts, the Eagles have nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. You don't need to use Henderson less anymore. Every game is do the best you can to win the football game. And if Trayvon Henderson getting more explosive, that's the right answer. If it's Ramondre Stevenson, that's fine as well too. I kind of think Hunter Henry should be in that mix as well.
Yep.
If we say that the tight end position is more or less the same outside of George Kittle, and I'm adamantly against the idea that Niners beat the Eagles, so everything is basically a wash, why not a guy that we think maybe could advance 1 or 2 rounds, is like a top 6 team in terms of odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl, is used as often in the red zone as just about any tight end among the playoff teams there is. Like I think Hunter Henry could be part of that group as well too. I'm all for mixing in Patriots guys because I think they win this week, and I think they will be the favorite, whether right or wrong, against whoever they face come round 2 because they can't go against the Broncos. I don't think they will end up going against the Texans, which would mean that maybe it's the Bills or the Jags. But either way, you're going against the Jags in that scenario anyhow. And I think you're fine with the Patriots offense against the Jags even if they lose. So I kind of think this is one of those that I'd be very comfortable going as my variety picks, kind of sprinkling in some flavor with whatever this Patriots offense gives you.
I can't remember who I was listening to. Might have been Sigmund Bloom from Football Guys, said that this is not Monday Night Football, Super Wildcard Weekend. This is Monday Night Rock Fight between the Texans and the Steelers, right?
Yes.
Because you have the NFL's most expensive defense against inarguably the NFL's one of the top 2 defenses in the NFL, in my opinion. So I guess it is arguable still. But Houston's number 1 or number 2. One of the things, and Herschel Sheth, who actually won this challenge 10 years ago. I had him on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown earlier this week, and he pointed out, the Texans defense seems attractive given how good they've been all season. But remember, if a defense gives up like 13, 14 points or whatever the cutoff is, I'd have to look it up. Now, all of a sudden, their defense isn't churning out a whole lot of points unless they're getting pick sixes or punt return for touchdowns or scoop and scores, right? And so with the Texans defense, I think it's attractive on paper. Hey, they're the 5 seed. They could be out in 1 or 2 games. There's other players on this team like Nico Collins, pass-catching running back, and Woody Marks as well. Dalton Schultz, I think somebody mentioned in the YouTube chat earlier, might have been Tom Smith. No, Steven Yurgalos mentioned Dalton Schultz as well. So when you look at this Texans team that's going up against Pittsburgh, I think that on the surface, there's not a lot of choices. But if we dig a little bit deeper, maybe this is more of a flatter decision that we have to make between several different players.
Yeah, so it's the lowest total of any of the playoff games right now.
Yeah,
I don't think there's weather. Excuse me. I don't think there's weather necessarily involved, but it's going to be January in Pittsburgh. There probably is some degree of weather. The Texans' offense has not been very good. One of the weak links entering the year, one of the weakest links just across every unit was probably the Texans' offensive line. And my whole pushback on people that were fading Nico Collins, which I guess ended up being correct. We could debate the merits of that, I guess, in a little bit. Was the Texans' offensive line can't be worse than they were last year, right? They were one of the worst units of all time among offensive linemen. It can't be that bad. They tried to change through things. And yes, it was kind of like the Brewers cycling through spare parts at first base, and hopefully that one of those things hits. But I thought the Texans' offensive line would be better this year. You're going against TJ Watt defense. I think the Steelers fan base is going to be riled up, but still a defense that's exploitable and vulnerable, especially when you have big play options. Well, the Texans offense can do that. And I actually think their receiving core is sneakily one of the best in the league. So if we think the Texans can score points on the Steelers, I believe this is probably the best option for Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers offense, because Aaron Rodgers, with how quick he gets that ball out, how he's able to read the defenses, you can negate that pass rush specifically. The only issue is everyone in the secondary and the front seven of that Texans defense is one of the best in the NFL. So I kind of think that Aaron Rodgers, just even the checkdowns, it won't matter, because at the end of the day, the talent will just win out no matter how many times Kenny Gainwell gets the ball or Pat Freiermuth receptions, whatever else. Like, Rodgers can only do so much when the entirety of that 11-man defense is working in unison to stop what I feel like is the only option the Steelers have as a short throw.
I think the Steelers and the people I've talked to who are playing in this, Joe, the Steelers seem to be the second hard fade team of this competition. And if that's the case, consider that, but then consider the people that are going to roster a Steeler. And the way that Kenneth Gainwell, who has come on the last month and a half, 30 catches, I think 29 catches over his last 5 games. It was something crazy like that. What's your guess on how people are going to handle him? And is he one of these? Because you want to pivot. You can't have chalk all the way through. You got to have one or two differentiating factors on your team. And I think Gainwell could be one of them.
I agree with you, because if we're saying, hey, who just generates the most points in their one game that they play, if we think the Steelers lose to the Texans, whatever else, I also believe the Steelers theoretically have a better chance of moving on than, let's just say, the Panthers and Rams, which is probably the one that gets faded the most. I think the Steelers have a better chance of beating the Texans than the Niners have beating the Eagles. Mm-hmm. And I actually kind of think the Steelers have a better chance beating the Texans than the Chargers beating the Patriots. So in that way, I agree with you. I think Kenny Gainwell is the right answer. I had really tried to talk myself into DK Metcalf, because in the event the Steelers win, it's because I would imagine Metcalf got like 1 60-yard reception, or he just ran away in a slant, like Jordy Nelson kind of deal. There's ways I could talk to her, like DK Metcalf is reinvigorated, which I'm using the Lamar Jackson term earlier, reinvigorated after the suspension and ready to prove the doubters wrong, some narrative related BS. But it's full point PPR, and Gainwell is going to be the option. That is the quickest way to negate Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter is to check the ball down as quickly and often as possible. You can have you could move the ball down the field every 4 plays to get a first down in that kind of facet, especially when Rodgers is your quarterback. So I kind of think Gainwell is going to be a popular soft fade target, in so much maybe he's over 8%, 7% rostered. And like, I think that's the right answer, though. And again, I love the strategy talk. I feel like I'm very bad at it, because we've been like, hey, this guy that's the obvious chalk, don't play it. Oh, it's in my lineup right now currently.
But Joe, you do have to have a lot of chalk. I mean, looking at the winners of this competition over the last 15 years or however long we've been doing it, probably closer to 20 now. There is a lot of chalk in the lineup. I always say, like, I look at the winners lineup that wins the $500,000 in this, and I'm like, really? That's the one that was better than everybody. It's always just like one or two like weird plays that ended up like, okay, when I was talking with Harshal on Tuesday, when they won it, their Steeler that year, this was 10 years ago, their Steeler that year was Martavis Bryant. And the reason Martavis Bryant was the correct play was because Le'Veon Bell had a torn ACL. It was D'Angelo Williams in there who wasn't doing much. And Antonio Brown ended up getting knocked out by Vontaze Burfict early in the game, the second game, right? And Bryant already outscored him in the first game. So obviously Bryant was the play. There was who was picking it, Martavis Bryant over Antonio Brown? It was just one of those things where you just got to be a little bit different. But chalk is not a bad thing. Like, you can eat the chalk in this. You can eat a lot of it and still win $500,000.
In my mind, again, as the guy that just loves strategy talk, I thought the differentiator would be one of the flexes and one of the quarterbacks. And we'll go to our lineups probably here in a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I don't mind if you say Kenny Gainwell is part of that mix, because there's a guaranteed floor that he's getting. Maybe is Jalen Warren sneakily kind of part of this option too. So what if Gainwell got hurt? To the Martavis Bryant, Antonio Brown thing, if Gainwell got hurt early in this game, Jalen Warren can literally do the same stuff. It's just that Jalen Warren is a better runner than what Kenny Gainwell is. And if you just got Gainwell and Jalen Warren put together, even one game of that, and especially he will be more lower percent owned than Gainwell, that's intriguing to me. I didn't want to go like ready to jump off that cliff on this hot take idea, but I'm watching the chat. I think everyone's got really smart ideas. I'm envious of your group. We do a lot of RotoWire YouTube stuff, on our chat is also excellent as well. But these guys are really smart with the ownership rate conversations, and I kind of wonder if Jaylen Warren isn't like sneakily in that mix in the event that the worst case thing happened to Kenny Gainwell.
I think you're right, and I didn't consider that, but I think you're right because those guys are kind of neck and neck. I mean, Gainwell obviously is getting more points catching the ball, but there is something to be said for Jaylen Warren because he can catch the ball as well. Okay.
Right.
Couple minutes on the Seahawks and Broncos. They don't play this weekend, but I thought we should talk about them. JSN, to me, inarguably, is going to be the most owned Seattle Seahawk player in this competition. Can you make a case for Sam Darnold? Let's say you think the Seahawks are going to the Super Bowl. Is Darnold the proper play then, or is it still JSN?
So you'd be countering the JSN people because you're getting at least some points from the touchdown perspective. But JSN is such a fulcrum to that offense, regardless of scoring touchdowns, that I don't know if I can go that way. Or at least there's a number of quarterbacks that I can talk myself into instead. And I don't think the Seahawks, I know they're the prohibitive favorite, at least among Vegas. I like prohibitive is a relative word, but they are the favorite to win the Super Bowl. That defense is really good. I wholeheartedly understand why that's the case. But we have watched Sam Darnold wither away in these exact scenarios before in his career, notably last year as well. It wouldn't be a knock on Sam Darnold's entire regular season to say one or two bad things happen or go wrong and he throws an interception, or the Rams defense, which has got him a lot, and theoretically they face him in round 2, complicate issues more. And you have one game of Sam Darnold, and that's it. Like you will not have done anything if you had one game of Sam Darnold relative to a bunch of the other quarterbacks that if you get correctly, you get 2 games out of that. So I don't think Sam Darnold's the right way. I had talked myself into that one flex spot being either Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker, because in the event that the Seahawks do make it to the Super Bowl, you're having JSN be a pretty highly rostered. What if he got hurt, right? It's the same sort of thing. But also, if the Seahawks make it there, it's because Kenny Walker and Zach Charbonnet end up being a pretty critical factor. And it's Charbonnet if he scores the touchdowns, or Kenny Walker if he just does a whole bunch of the yardage stuff. And if you get one of those right, often they're cutting into the other's work. Like if you're setting 2 lineups, you probably set one with Kenneth Walker and one with Zach Charbonnet. So I think it's probably more so of the running backs if I was trying to differentiate, but I'm not sure there's a reason to.
The reason I think to me is Seattle's defense is so good. Mike McDonald's a defensive coach. If they just take the air out of the ball and dare these offenses to beat them, and they are running the ball well with Walker and Charbonnet, then I could see it. And maybe, JSN is 6 for 70, every game or something like that. Now, that's a lot of ifs, but that's the scenario I could see. Over to Denver, I don't know, man.
I'm with you.
The number 1 seed, I don't trust the quarterback in Bo Nix. RJ Harvey, I said this, I think I said this on Tuesday night. It seemed like RJ Harvey had 30 carries for about 12 yards in that Week 18 game. I think Sutton is worthwhile, but after that, I mean, Franklin and Mims and Bryant and all these other guys, and I don't like any of the tight ends. Certainly the defense is good, but do I really want to utilize my defense that's not playing wild card weekend and is the number 1 seed? I don't know. I don't have any good ideas on Denver. Maybe they're the key to winning this.
Yeah, I mean, if you're punting the defense in the same way that you punt the kicker, I can understand that, because if the Broncos go far, you'd assume it's because of the defense. And I think you said Sigmund Bloom talked about it, or somebody else, but like that they would have kept them under probably 12 points or whatever, and probably reached the thresholds the FFPC is referring to. I agree with you. And it's ironic because shouldn't we be the ones that have been converted to Sean Payton and Bo Nix? I mean, that was the best Broncos game in the entire year, was what they did to my Packers. Yeah. And that was when the season was lost, when I lost all hope, when I was the most depressed this year. And there's been many ups and downs of this roller coaster, but all those injuries, especially Micah Parsons, that was it. The Packers can't do anything after that game. And Bo Nix looked exceptional. We talk about the great defense of the Broncos, and I think back to that Packers game and how the Packers were getting them, and how the Giants, came back in the second half of that one game. The Broncos came back to beat the Giants, but the Giants had gotten that many points. And you kind of go through the list, there's 4 or 5 games that the Broncos defense just didn't do what you thought they would do. And in my mind, I go back to, I don't know if they win all the way to the Super Bowl because of that defense. It will be because the offense makes enough plays, and I just don't trust Bo Nix yet. Even though I watched it firsthand have his best game, I don't trust that. So I'm with you wholeheartedly. I don't know if they win their first game quite frankly. I think we could see both number one seeds lose before they get to the Super Bowl, but even the divisional round, I think it's certainly in play.
Yeah, it definitely is in play, especially considering the Patriots, the Broncos, or the Patriots, the Jaguars, the Bills, and these other teams there as well. We're going to step out and take our final break. When we come back, Joe and I will put together an FFPC World Famous Playoff Challenge lineup for you. I can't play in it since I work for the FFPC, but so feel free to dupe me. Spoiler alert. My lineup never has won before, but change it the way you want to, and maybe you can be the $500K winner. Register now at myffpc.com. Win $500,000, $200 entry fee. Win a $100,000 grand prize with a $35 entry fee. No draft, no salary cap, no rules. No convoluted rules, I should say. There are rules, like only one player per team. If you want Bo Nix, you can't have Cortland Sutton. If you want Kenneth Walker, you can't have JSN. Enter now, myffpc.com. We come back. It is lineup building time. Joe Bartel from RotoWire. I'm Eric Balkman. This is FFPC Insider Access on the Better Sports Network.
What's up, guys? Andrew Cooper here, Fantasy Alarm, and it's that time of year at the FFPC Playoff Challenge. This is one of my very favorite contests. Forget about all your redraft leagues. Forget about DFS. This is one last chance for glory, and it comes during the NFL playoffs. Yes, you can go in with no salaries, no drafts, no convoluted stuff, and create your lineup to carry you through the playoffs. The only rule, you cannot pick two players from the same team, which I kind of like. I quietly don't want to get crushed by some stack of Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua. You have to pick one or the other. That's it. You pick 12 players. Try and set yourself up for glory here. And there's a lot on the line. Two different contests, $35 contest or the $200 contest with a $500,000 on the line in this one. It is one of the premier events in this fantasy football space. If you win this one, you go down in fantasy football history with the other gold-plated names at the FFPC. So get your contest locked in now before they fill, because I tell you what, they will. If you want to get into the FFPC Playoff Challenge, go to myffpc.com, sign up now, and you can use promo code ALARM, ALARM. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more.
FFPC Insider Access rolls on the first show of January 2026 for one more segment. Eric Balkman here from the FFPC. He is Joe Bartel from RotoWire. Let's build some world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge lineups. It is live right now. You can enter this yourself at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Win $500K with a $200 entry. Win $100K with a $35 entry. These lineups will take minutes to build because you don't have to operate under the parameters of a draft or a salary cap. You're picking one player per NFL team, hard fading two of the NFL playoff teams, 12-team lineup, quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, tight end, 4 flexes, kicker, and defense. Register now, myffpc.com. Joe, let's get started here. I think the way I want to do this is we'll go back and forth here. We'll start with quarterback and then running back, receiver, tight end, kicker, defense, and then we'll get to our flexes. We got about 15 minutes left in the show, so we'll have to go relatively quickly. I'm going to enter in mine right now. I'll lead things off. We'll get to your quarterback in a little bit, but I'm projecting in this scenario a New England Super Bowl appearance. So I am kicking off my lineup with one Drake May from New England. Your quarterback, sir.
I'm going Jalen Hurts. Talked about it earlier. I think the Eagles beat the Niners. I don't know any way that they don't. And I'm kind of trying to find what'll differentiate from like the crowd. So, for example, at the quarterback, I think there's probably 3 or 4 different options. We talked about Sam Darnold. We mentioned Matthew Stafford. You have Drake May in there. I don't disagree with that choice as well. So if there's going to be different, let's just call them flex options for a position, I want the guy that I know will make it X amount of rounds, but also is going to be most crucial and factor into that offense in the way that I think Jalen Hurts can. Again, 4 points per passing touchdown. Hurts gets that semi-negated because he can run for so many touchdowns. I think Hurts is probably the right answer for trying to have a unique enough lineup to win this thing.
Yeah, and they should beat the 49ers. We'll see what happens after that. And certainly I think the Bears defense is a little bit of a fraud, so they could get to the NFC Championship game, and it might not be that complicated. I'll go with my running backs here. I'll do my running backs here. So you're taking Jalen Hurts. My Eagles representative will be one Saquon Barkley at one of my running back positions. And quite frankly, if you're not picking Josh Allen, it's hard not to go with James Cook. And that's what I'm going to do with my other running back position here. I'm going to go with James Cook for the Jaguars, for the Bills against the Jaguars. Maybe they get a second game as well. And Barkley, I feel like, again, the whole CMC argument. Let's pick the highest scoring player. And I think that is Barkley in this scenario, the way I'm playing this out. So Barkley and Cook are in my backfield. Who's in yours, Joe?
Yeah, it's interesting because normally in these playoff games, we're just trying to stack the teams that we feel most comfortable make it to the Super Bowl. So in the NFC side, I talked about this, like Stafford and the Rams, right? I think the Rams have the best chance to make the Super Bowl. I would theoretically, if everything were equal and available, try to get as many Rams as possible. I think the answer to the AFC is I don't know. Like the shrug the shoulders emoji. I don't know who's going to end up winning it. And especially as we're doing this now, if I knew next week who was capable, fine. So because of that, I want as many shares of guys that I think have the chance to in prominent spots. So I think you're right with James Cook, and it goes against what I mentioned earlier. The Jags allowed the fewest rushing yards on average across the entire league. But if the Bills were to win, James Cook is a central factor for that, and he will be for the following week as well. And the Bills are one of the teams that we think have a chance to at least make it to the Super Bowl. So I think James Cook is one of them. I understood what you're doing with Saquon Barkley. I thought about it as well, too. I was trying to make a bit of a differentiating lineup. I guess call me a homer here, but I went with Josh Jacobs. Hopefully he's healthy now at this point. If the Packers are able to upset the Bears, Jacobs will be a critical factor not just in this game, but the following game against the Seahawks as well. And if the red zone offense for the Packers gets better, Josh Jacobs is a part of that. So I'm taking Jacobs, and more importantly, I didn't think I could go with Jordan Love. There isn't any tight end option. You can't take the Packers defense. There's no kicker. So unless you're just hard fading the Packers, Jacobs feels like one of the only options. I know what you're going to go with, but I think Jacobs is one of only two options out there.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Who's your other running back that you have here, Joe?
Yeah, James Cook and Josh Jacobs.
Oh, you're going with James Cook.
I agreed with you. Yeah, you were a smart guy.
Agreed. All right, got it. Okay, moving on to wide receivers. Pretty chalky here for me. Going with Jackson Smith and Jigba from Seattle, and I'm going with Puka Nacua. I already have my quarterback here, so I'm not going to go with Stafford. I'm betting on Nacua just continuing this mad run that he's been on, even with Davante Adams coming back. So I'm going to roll with JSN and Nacua at wideout. What about you?
I'm nervous. You said you haven't won this before. You've won it like 15 times because I actually went with the same exact receivers. So it means we're really smart, right, Eric? That's what this is.
I think this is we're just picking chalk. You know, like this is we have to have some chalk in this, and certainly it makes sense that we're both going with.
I'll frame it this way: one of these two teams is making it to the Super Bowl of the NFC. So you're getting the most explosive fantasy difference maker. And you will counter everybody else who has them as well too. Like it's almost like in a way a DFS slate where you have to have some different plays, right? But the chalk part of things, you have to have that guy that's a 70% rostered. Like more likely that's what you have to have if your lineup isn't winning. And I think Puka Nacua and JSN singularly can do that. You get the double up points as well too in the Super Bowl. I feel very confident if I'm betting it's either the Seahawks or Rams that make it to the Super Bowl, and they could ultimately play in the divisional round as well, too.
Oh, it'd be a fantastic game for sure. Mm-hmm. And if that happens, then you're guaranteed one of those players in the NFC Championship. Okay, I'm going to do tight end here. I know you like McCaffrey from the Niners. I'm going to go with Kittle here, a little bit of a pivot. I know he will not see the volume that McCaffrey does, but I think his efficiency is probably going to be a little bit better. I worry about the Pearsall injury. If the Niners are going to move the ball against the Eagles, I don't think it's slamming it with McCaffrey 25, 30 times. I think Kittle's going to have to be involved. I know he's dealing with a bit of a hamstring injury right now, but I'm still going to roll with him, especially we talked about it earlier. Not a lot of great tight ends this year. I'm going to go with Kittle as mine. Who's yours?
Totally understand that. And I think that's the right call if you believe it's like a 70-30 chance that the Niners could beat the Eagles. Or sorry, like a 30-70. I think it's more like 80-20. Like I don't know a way in which the Niners offense does that. And even still, the Niners will be competitive. I'm not doubting that. I'm not doubting Kyle Shanahan whatsoever. I've been foolish too often with it. So let's just say George Kittle gets 24 points in a 1.5 point per reception league. You get the touchdown as well too. How many tight ends can get to 24 points of these teams of 14? I talked about Brenton Strange earlier. I think if you have the Eagles advancing, Dallas Goedert maybe gets there if you get that third game. I don't think A.J. Barner does necessarily, even if the Seahawks advance. The Rams spread out too much. To me, it's Hunter Henry. And again, I don't think it's a by reception type of deal. I think Hunter Henry gets there because he scores 3 touchdowns over the course of 3 games or whatever else it might be. I don't mind Dalton Schultz if you want to go that direction instead, and probably is even less roster. But I have confidence the Patriots have a better chance of advancing than the Texans, which may be controversial in that. And in that regard, I think Hunter Henry has been a factor whatever the Patriots choose to do, and especially in the red zone. So if you're not picking Kittle, I think the answer probably is Hunter Henry can get close to that Kittle price.
Yeah, Hunter Henry's not a player I had mentioned when we were talking about the Patriots, but I think it's one worth mentioning for sure because of how involved he is in that offense and the lack sort of a consistent alpha number 1 receiver on that team. We've seen flashes with Diggs, maybe Booty earlier in the season, but Henry's sort of been that guy, pretty steady Eddie all season long. I want to switch from flexes. Let's go to kickers and defenses next. I'll mention both of mine here up at the top. I'm going to roll with Cameron Dicker from the Chargers here as sort of like a soft fade.
Oh, no.
And then I am going to roll with the Texans here.
Oh, no. We copied each other again. This cannot be good news.
It's fine, man. Don't worry about it. As far as copying each other.
I strongly believe there's not another defense to roster unless you want to roster the Rams, which I kind of am okay with because maybe they get the most games, but is that more lucrative than Matthew Stafford or Puka Nacua? My answer probably no, but like the Texans is the right call. They can single-handedly keep the Steelers under 2 scores. They can get sacks and turnovers. If they were to win, they could potentially face the Broncos. I like the Texans defense in that matchup and do the same thing. Like I don't know if there's another defense that is more chalky than the Texans, and yet I can't pivot away. Kicker was tough because I think there's, like I mentioned Cam Little earlier. I was like, well, you know, if there is a more premium placed on 60-yard field goals, which I don't think the FFPC is quite to that level of.
Well, you'll get if he kicks a 60-yard field goal, you'll get 6 points for that field goal.
Okay.
So you will get the added distance onto that.
Yeah, and if the Jags win multiple games, I mean, like you're talking about, all it takes is 2 kicks that Cam Little could do that. He's getting 12 points, which is interesting. I also want Cam Dicker because I think the Chargers could win. I think the Chargers will be able to move the ball still against the Patriots defense. So they'll be in position. And while he's not making 60-yard field goals or even 50-yarders necessarily, Dicker is a part of that solution for that offense and would be even if they were to advance as well.
So I think the other argument that we could make here, and I don't think we necessarily have, but if you don't like the Patriots, there's certainly a non-zero chance that the Chargers could upset them. They're only 3.5-point dogs. And then, and it's not like the Chargers defense is bad. Maybe you flip it and you go Fairbairn for the Texans, who's been one of the best kickers all year, and you go with the Chargers defense. Or I'll throw another pepper in the gumbo here. If you don't like the Broncos and think that they're going to be one and done, what about the Denver defense there too as well? When no other player is really stepping up as a good selection on that squad, you go with the Denver defense. Seems weird, but it's possible.
I know what you're thinking, but I guess I'll lean into one of my flexes, and we could talk about the others in a second. But I think Cortland Sutton, truthfully, is the only answer. Like I really, really try to find a way to get RJ Harvey in there. I thought if the Bills win, like the opponent would be Broncos Bills in round 2. RJ Harvey, I like in the same way I like Travis Etienne, rush against the Bills defense, right? Like, so I was trying to find any sort of scenario. I can't take Bo Nix. Evan Ingram's been so bad. I loved him entering this year. It's been just a heartache for me. I think the only option is Cortland Sutton. So if you kind of wanted to just hard fade the Broncos, I wouldn't really blame you, and say maybe Ted McMillan does just go off against the Rams and that negates Cortland Sutton. But I don't know if there's another option outside of the Broncos with Cortland Sutton, to be honest.
Well, you and I were of the same mind on Sutton because I had him as well as one of my flexes. I just think that if they are going to move the ball, and I don't know about you, are you believing this Dobbins thing that he's going to come back for the AFC?
I thought that was going to be a conversation point, and I was going to be like, that just seems like
to me, even if he does, he's not in any kind of game shape. I just don't think he's going to be very impactful either.
It would remind me of Pacheco when he returned last year with the Chiefs and how ineffective that was, and we kept hoping, and it'll get healthier after. Well, no, it just never did.
The difference was I think Pacheco was still pretty hurt when he came back. I think Dobbins would only come back if he's good to go.
Yeah, I mean, he's a free agent this year. I understand that sentiment, but a guy that has not had a successful NFL career, if he could be a part of a team that wins a Super Bowl, what would you push your body through to go ahead and get to? I think J.K. Dobbins is one of those guys, the inverse of Malik Nabers, for example, back to our conversation in the very opening part of the show. I don't know. I love Dobbins as a player. I think it's just so frustrating how the injuries have sapped him of what he could have been. But if you're doing some of those games where you could pick a stack of players, it was a little intriguing to me to have the Dobbins part of that if you thought the Broncos would get further. But in this sort of format where it's only one player from one team, I don't think you can justify it.
Yeah, I think it has to be Sutton, and I think he's going to be high owned. Who's more higher owned, Sutton or JSN in this contest? Who do you think is going to be higher owned?
I think it's JSN because there's going to be too many dummies out there that are trying to differentiate with the number 1 seed and think the number 1 seed matters.
Right.
And they'll be like, oh, JSN was great for my team or my buddy's team. I got to have him in there. I think there'll be too many people trying to differentiate with the Bronco guys as opposed to the Seahawks.
Flex number 2 for me, you alluded to this earlier. I'm going to go with our buddy Christian Watson here as flex number 2. I consider Jacobs, and certainly I think you can make the case that the Packers have become this power running team, not only this year, but especially last year. And their bread is buttered with that ground game in the postseason. I just still am nervous about the health of Jacobs. I'm still nervous that if I put him in, he could have one of these disappearing acts where he ends up with like 8 carries for like 30 yards and Emmanuel Wilson's in there again. I don't think that's likely. I don't think it happens, but I recognize that there is more than a non-zero chance it could happen. The good thing about Christian Watson is you can expose the Bears deep, and Watson is a great field flipper. He's a great lid lifter, and it would only take 1 or 2 plays for him to have a game. And with the Packers having a 1.5 point favorite on their being a 1.5 point favorite going into this game, maybe we get 2 games out of Watson and see what he does against Seattle the following week. I don't know. I don't think Jacobs is a bad pick at all. In fact, if I was doing multiples, I think I'd probably have him on. But for this particular format, I went with Watson as my second flex. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like, if you think the Packers lose to the Bears, which would be horrific, and we hope never happens as Packer fans here, but if that happens, Christian Watson's probably scoring more points than Josh Jacobs because that Packers run offense didn't do what they needed to for Matt LaFleur to be effective. So Christian Watson would singularly be scoring more points than Josh Jacobs. That's a win if you consider that a flex. My whole argument for taking Jacobs was if the Packers were to win, it's because Jacobs was successful and would be more successful than I think Christian Watson would be against the Seahawks in round 2. My number 2 is Christian McCaffrey. We talked about him earlier as well. Instead of George Kittle, I truly think there's only 2 options, George Kittle or Christian McCaffrey. So maybe the answer is not to like pump up the FFPC numbers per se, but just make sure you make 2 lineups. You can't just spend 200 on both of the 2 or the 50 or whatever it is, 35 on the other one. Just make 2 of those because it does feel like there is one or another option and only one of the other option for a few of these teams. And to me, it has to be Christian McCaffrey over George Kittle.
I'm just looking at this. Looks like the line just moved on the Philly game. Philly's now 5.5 point favorite as we're talking about it on the show. Did Joe Bartel from RotoWire move this line? Potentially. We don't know. All right. My third flex will be another tight end. I'm going to go with a dual tight end lineup. I'm going to skip the Bears running backs. I'm going to skip Burden. I'm going to go with Colston Loveland. I feel like what I've seen from him over the past few weeks is he's been able to be a seam ripper. He's been getting the tough catches underneath. No matter what Chicago's game plan is, it seems like he's been figuring heavily into it. Now, Rome Odunze is probably, in fact, I don't even think he's on the injury report. I think he's going to be back this game. I think his impact is not really felt. Loveland has just been so important and integral to this passing game. With the tight end premium format, I wanted to get multiple tight ends. I could have gone Strange. I chose not to. I'm going to go with Colston Loveland here.
Yeah, that's the right call. It might not have been on this specific platform, but I had done a show prior to the NFL draft with my friend Alan Sosky, who's a really great Dynasty mind, but also does a great job of hosting a lot of her shows at RotoWire. And we had been on the Visa network saying, like, at the time, it was like Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren, which one of those tight ends will be drafted first? And I had made the case for like plus 200 that Colston Loveland was the right call. That was like in early March. By the end of draft season, it was overwhelmingly Tyler Warren. So I looked really, really smart a month before when it was kind of close. And of course, Loveland goes ahead of Warren. I think that ended up being the right call for both teams, although we could debate the merits another day. I know what you're doing with the Colston Loveland thing. I get it, but I went with DeAndre Swift because if the Bears do win, they will be able to run the football against the Eagles. And I think DeAndre Swift or Kyle Monunga, again, that's the flex point to me. If you want to pick one of those running backs to be successful over the other, I have no argument there. But I think DeAndre Swift ends up being good enough against the Packers' run defense. And if the Bears were to win, does it against the Eagles as well, too.
It is Jacksonville wide receiver time.
Ooh.
I am going to let you go first on this one because I did basically a coin flip between two of these players. I eliminated one. It came down to two for me. I'm going to let you go first because I'm going to take the other one.
Yeah, it wasn't a Jacksonville receiver flip for me. I took ETN here, so I ended up having three running backs.
Perfect. All right.
I had ETN, CMC, and Swift in my flex spot. And again, I kind of think if the Jags beat the Bills, they could advance to the conference finals. And I think in that scenario, ETN's a big factor no matter what. But Bills, one of the worst run defenses in the league. And ETN can also be a pass catcher for that offense, too. We watched what Trevor Lawrence did in the final 4 games of the year involving ETN as a pass catcher the way he did. I actually think ETN is the only correct call of the receivers. It's not that you shouldn't differentiate. I again, if we're setting multiple lines, as you should, because this is a great competition, be a part of it any fast you can. I understand why, but I think ETN is actually the surefire thing with this matchup and matchups to come.
Yeah, so you make a great case for ETN there. I want to be different somehow. I know this guy will not be highly owned for Jacksonville or in this challenge. I'm going to go with Jakobi Meyers here. The impact that he's had when this offense has been humming, it's been in large part because of his big catches on third down, not only the possession stuff over the middle, but these big plays downfield. Similar to the argument I was making with Loveland, this guy's doing it no matter what the game plan is, which is why I want to include him in there. I thought it was going to be either Myers or Washington.
I know.
Take the other one. Washington, I think you can make a case for too, because
definitely
the ascent that he has made, his impact on special teams, which counts in this competition, certainly would make a fine choice. And I guess the moral of the story here, Joe and I did our best. Joe and I tried to do our best. We know this isn't our best. So just do multiple lineups.
Yes, exactly.
Multiple rosters. To recap once again, Joe's roster for this FFPC Playoff Challenge: Jalen Hurts at quarterback, the running backs, Josh Jacobs, James Cook, Christian McCaffrey, DeAndre Swift, Travis Etienne. The receivers are Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Cortland Sutton. Tight end is Hunter Henry. Kicker is Cameron Dicker. And defense is the Texans. For me, I have Drake May at quarterback. My running backs are Saquon Barkley and James Cook. I have wide receivers of Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Cortland Sutton, Christian Watson, Jakobi Meyers. Tight ends are George Kittle, Colston Loveland, Cameron Dicker, and the Texans, my kicker and defense as well. MyFFPC.com is where to go if you want to dupe these. At JB Fantasy Sports on X is where to connect with Joe, and then give us the SiriusXM schedule for you as well.
Yeah, I'll be on tomorrow again, noon to 2 p.m. Eastern, so 11 to 1 for us in Central Time Zone on RotoWire Fantasy Sports Day with my co-host Mario Puig. We'll do a lot more of the playoff conversation, get you guys set for those games. As we progress up into the Super Bowl, it's a lot more dynasty conversation, Devy stuff. Mario's been one of the best, I feel like, talk about prospects now for a number of years, and it's actually sneakily some of my favorite shows because we can go off the rails and have just interesting strategy talk like I like to do, like we had here today. And then normally on Saturdays, I do 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, Angel Fire Radio. It's just me solo hosting for 2 hours, so love the user engagement. If we could have all you guys in the chat call onto the show, get your thoughts on any dynasty stuff related. We'll have 2 weeks off with the postseason happening on the concurrent channel 88 for NFL. So I'll return for that one 24th of January on Saturday again, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, Angel Fire Radio.
There you go. Love it. And at JB Fantasy Sports, ask your questions there. Connect with Joe there. This was so much fun, Joe. We got to have you back on again. Enjoy the playoffs. Enjoy the Super Bowl. And we will talk with you again very soon, my friend.
Sounds good. Go Packers.
Go Pack, go. MyFFPC.com is where to go for the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge. No draft, no salary cap. Build your lineup in minutes. Only one player per NFL team. $200 entry fee will get you eligible for a $500,000 grand prize. A $35 entry fee still gets you eligible for $100,000. I want to thank Joe Bartel and our producer, Sean Engel. We're going to keep our Packers fandom streak going here. Next week, 7 o'clock, Thursday, we'll be joined by Pat Fitzmaurice from Fantasy Pros. Another great, I think he's from Joe. I think he lives in Illinois now, but I think he's from Wisconsin as well. All these great fantasy minds coming from Wisconsin. So good to have that on our trophy shelf. Be good, Joe. We will talk with you again soon. And for all the viewers out there, enjoy the playoffs. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. Have a great weekend, and we will talk with you again next Thursday. This has been FFPC Insider Access on the Better Sports Network.